A very good afternoon to you, and welcome to today's proceedings of the National Assembly. This sitting coming after a month-long recess. The broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. The broadcast is available on KBC Channel 1 as well as Bunge TV. This broadcast is also available on YouTube, courtesy of the Parliament of Kenya YouTube channel. This afternoon, the Sectional Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2019, is before the National Assembly, and the question will be put. The debate for the second reading was already concluded. The Refugees Bill, National Assembly Bill number 62 of 2019, will be read for the first time this afternoon. The principal object of this bill is to provide for the recognition, protection, and management of refugees, to give effect to the 1951 United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees, the 1967 Protocol relating to the status of refugees, and the 1969 OAU Convention governing the specific aspects of refugee problems in Africa. There are a number of motions which are also lined up this afternoon. Among them, the report of the Committee of the Whole House on the National Drought Management Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of 2019. A question will be put and third reading. The other motion will be by the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing, and it's on the approval of ratification of protocol to amend the Convention of Offences and Certain Acts Committed on Board Aircraft, Montreal Protocol of 2014. The Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing, will also move another motion on the approval of ratification of bilateral air services agreements between Kenya and the Hellenic Republic, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Seychelles, and Finland. The Chairperson, Committee on Delegated Legislation, will also move a motion on the report of the Public Finance Management Biashara Kenya Fund Regulations 2019 and three other related sets of regulations. If you're just joining us, this is the National Assembly proceedings, and there on your screen, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Justin Muturi, is ready to oversee the business of the National Assembly on this 10th day of September, when the National Assembly resumes its sittings from a month-long recess. My name is Edward Kabasa. I will hand you over so that you can follow the proceedings live, courtesy of KBC and PBU.
Let us pray. Almighty God, who in wisdom and goodness have appointed the office of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor as your servants whom you've been pleased to call to the performance of important trust in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests are committed to our church. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honourable members, I wish to welcome you back from the 1 month long recess and hope that you have refreshed and rejuvenated for that part of this session. As we resume this part of the session, may I remind members about my communication made on Tuesday, June 5th, 2018, in which I asked all members to register in the chamber biometric system. The registration is for purposes of recording chamber attendance in the House. In addition, honourable members, to the record of attendance developed through the biometric system, I'm glad to convey to the House that since July 24th, 2019, the members' login panel has been configured to record any entry made by a member upon logging in. This is a second layer of confirming attendance should the biometric system fail to capture chamber attendance of a particular member. In this regard, I urge all members to register with both the biometric system as well as ensure they use their cards to log in, even if a member is not wishing to speak to any matter in the House. May I, however, caution that this new addition is not an alternative to the registration of chamber attendance through the biometric system, but serves to complement the system. Honourable members, I therefore urge all of you who are yet to register in the biometric system or those who have misplaced their login cards to urgently make the necessary arrangements with the Chief Sergeant at Arms. This may be done at the entrance of the chamber during working hours when the House is not sitting. I thank you.
Order number 3, messages.
Members making your way in, please just come in and take your seats. Honourable members, I have 2 messages from the President. Honourable members may recall that on July 4th, 2019, the National Assembly passed the Parliamentary Service Bill, National Assembly Bill number 6 of 2018. This bill sought to make further provision as regards the Parliamentary Service Commission and the Parliamentary Service as re-established under the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and to repeal the Parliamentary Service Act of 2000. Thereafter, the bill was presented for assent to His Excellency the President in accordance with provisions of the Constitution and our standing orders. However, in exercise of the powers conferred the President under Article 115(1)(b) of the Constitution, His Excellency the President, by way of a memorandum dated 16th August 2019, has since referred the bill back to the National Assembly for reconsideration. In the memorandum, The President has expressed reservations on A, Clause 20 of the bill regarding the facilitation of activities held outside the precincts of Parliament by members and staff of Parliament. B, Clause 43 of the bill on the remuneration of employees of the Commission. Consequently, the President recommends amendments to the said clauses and the bill. Honourable members, standing under number 152, Clause 2, requires the House to consider the President's reservations within 21 days upon receipt of the memorandum. In this regard, the reservations of the President, as contained in his memorandum, now stand committed to the Departmental Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs for consideration, which should table his report soonest to allow the House to consider the President's reservations within the same timeline. Honourable members, may I at this point remind the House of the Speaker's communication delivered on 28th of July 2015 concerning the consideration of the President's reservations to a bill and amendments thereto. I particularly draw your attention to my guidance that the voting threshold for the passage of amendments proposed by a committee or an individual member that may have the effect of fully accommodating the President's reservations is a simple majority, as contemplated under Article 122, Clause 1, I read together with Article 115, Clause 2, Paragraph A of the Constitution. On the other hand, an amendment that does not fully accommodate the President's reservations, or indeed one that has the effect of total override of the President's reservations, including negating his proposed text, would require a 2/3 voting threshold to be passed in keeping with the provisions of Article 115, Clause 4 of the Constitution. I wish to further reiterate that only the specific sections of the bill that have reservations ought to be considered. I therefore direct now that the clerk do circulate the memorandum from His Excellency the President to all members so that you familiarize yourselves with its contents. I thank you. I may resume my seat so that most members can make their way in. Honourable members, I have this further message from the President on the nomination of persons to the offices of the chairperson and members of the National Land Commission, NLC. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 42, I wish to convey a message from His Excellency the President relating to the nomination of persons for appointment to the offices of chairperson and members of the National Land Commission. Honourable members, the message, which was received in my office on 16th of August 2019, conveys that in exercise of powers conferred by Article 250, Clause 2 of the Constitution, as read together with Section 12 of the National Land Commission Act of 2012 and Section 5 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, the President nominated the following persons for appointment to the respective offices in the National Land Commission. 1, Mr. Gershom Otachi Bomwanwa, Chairperson. 2, the Honorable Esther Murugi Madenge, Member. 3, Professor James K. Tutoek, PhD, Member. 4, Ms. Gertrude Nduko Nguku, Member. 5, Mr. Reginald Okumu, Member. 6, Honorable Samuel Kazungu Kambi, Member. 7, Ms. Hubi Hussein Al-Haji, Member. 8, Mr. Alistair Murimi Mutugi, Member. And 9, the Honorable Tia Galgalo Ali, Member. In this regard, therefore, His Excellency the President now seeks the approval by this House of the nominations. Honourable members, standing under number 42, Clause 2, states, and I quote, if a message is received from the President at a time when the House is not in session, the Speaker shall forthwith cause a message to be transmitted to every member and shall report the message to the House on the day the House next sits, close the quotes. In accordance with the same standing order, I notified all members of this House of the nominations via a message dated 18th of August 2019. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 45, I refer the message together with the curriculum vitae of the nominees to the Departmental Committee on Lands for consideration. Paragraph 6 of the first schedule of the National Land Commission Act number 5 of 2012 requires the National Assembly to either approve or reject any of the nominees to the respective positions within 21 days of the day it next sits. In this regard, the committee should expeditiously notify the nominees and the general public of the time and place for holding the approval hearings, make public notifications in at least 2 newspapers of national circulation, inviting any person with representation regarding the process of nomination of the candidates and their suitability for appointment to the offices so nominated to make submissions before the committee. Thereafter, the committee should commence the necessary approval hearings and submit its report to the House by 26th of September 2019 to enable the House to consider the nominees within the statutory timelines. I thank you now, members. Yes, Honorable Pukose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to seek your guidance regarding the role of the National Assembly in vetting of persons for appointment to various offices, in particular, the authority of this House to approve a nominee with a condition. Honorable Speaker, you will recall that during approval of appointment of persons as High Commissioners and Ambassadors to Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, Algiers, Algeria, Dublin, Ireland, Lusaka, Zambia, Stockholm, Sweden, UN Habitat, and Seoul, South Korea on 6 June 2019, the House did approve the nominee to Seoul, South Korea, Ms. Mwende Mwingsi, subject to renouncing her citizenship to the United States of America in compliance with the provisions of Article 8C of the Constitution and Section 31 and 52 of the Leadership and Integrity Act number 19 of 2012 upon appointment and before taking office. Honorable Speaker, information available is that the said nominee intends to take up the appointment without renouncing her citizenship to the United States of America, notwithstanding the conditions set by this House. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I wish to request you to order the chairpersons of the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations and the Committee on Implementation to confirm this fact and inform the House on the actions by intent to take on the same. Further, I would also like to invite you, Honorable Speaker, to issue guidance on the matter and indeed what should be the way forward regarding approval of appointments with such conditions. That should the Departmental Committee on Lands, where you have just referred the nominees you've just communicated to the House for appointment to the office of chairperson and members of the National Land Commission, face a similar condition, would it be best to just reject the appointment instead of putting conditional approval? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, I think, yes, you raise a serious constitutional issue, but more importantly, also, there has been a judicial pronouncement on such matters, which arose out of the contestation for a member to run for the office of Senate in 2013. A member who was running on Agano Party ticket for the Senate position available in Taita Taveta. The member was denied nomination, went to court, the High Court. The High Court pronounced itself, and the member, having not been satisfied with the decision of the High Court, proceeded to the Court of Appeal, whereupon the Court of Appeal held inter alia that a person holding dual citizenship in Kenya may run for office. Indeed, if the office is elective, be elected, but may not take office before renunciation of their other citizenship in accordance with with the provisions of sections 31 and 52 of the Leadership and Integrity Act 2012. That decision of the Court of Appeal has not been vacated, and therefore any person who may be in violation of those two provisions actually is material for the judiciary in a criminal process because they are in violation of the law. But I think for the purposes of Parliament, and this House in particular, I would not direct that matter to the Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations because as far as they are concerned, they are spent. They are functus officio. It is a matter that since the House has resolved itself in a particular way, that should now be addressed by the Committee on Implementation to see how the executive, and particularly those responsible for those appointments, have complied with the conditional approval that this House gave, and in compliance with those two provisions of the two acts, as well as indeed Article 80 of the Constitution, as you've said. So I think that matter should be handled by the committee chaired by the Honorable Ole Kenta, so that they can go and find out whether indeed, because you have said in your own words that information available now be available to me, but obviously the Honorable Pukose will appear before that committee and then in better and greater detail provide that information to the committee, which then committee would make its decision known to the entire House. I think that would be the proper way to deal with the matter. But I think since you've raised another issue, I think I would request that the Honorable Pukose also appears before the Lands Committee and provide the information that you may have regarding any of these nominees whose names I've just read out. I think the House should proceed that way. The Honorable Ole Kenta's committee to take up the matter, find out what has happened, so that the House then is able to debate the matter on the basis of information and knowledge through that committee. Leader of Majority.
The Speaker, Honorable Pukosa, has raised a very substantive issue as you have ruled. The Speaker, Honorable Pukosa can also not take the House through rumors. Speaker, Honorable Pukosa should have done research and either present to this House whether an agreement has been sent to South Korea with the nominee's name. Speaker, Honorable Junet is saying the lady is working. Working where? So, Mr. Speaker, this House is a House of record. Speaker, this is a House of records. Speaker, I want to confirm that I was invited to the closure of a training program for these officers, and I was with the Chair of Defense. And on that day, that lady was not part of it, even though I was told just a few minutes before I came, she sneaked, but I can't confirm. Yeah, but she was not there. So, Mr. Speaker, I think Honorable Pukosa, as he appears before the Implementation Committee, he should present facts and figures. You know, you cannot come and say that government has done this and this. From where I sit, Honorable Pukose has not presented any facts, no agreement. He has no photos of the lady presenting her credentials to the President of South Korea. So, Mr. Speaker, as you have referred to the committee, let him also prepare his facts, because when the committee gets information, and I really wanted, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, maybe the defense chair should have called the CS Foreign Affairs and asked the status before we even send it to implementation. But now that it's going to implementation, the man from Endebess, one of the few medical doctors and a surgeon in the house, must also carry his tools of trade and facts and figures to show that the lady is working. Maybe the lady we are discussing has even relocated to the US, or maybe she has disowned the US citizenship and now she's a Kenyan.
Honourable members, awaiting some rectification to the machine. I'm not in a position to know who has made an intervention, but I think well, I will allow a few members to make some comments, but let us also not prejudice anybody's rights. Allow me to recognize the presence in the speakers gallery of pupils and students from the following institutions: Kanjira Primary School, Karachuonyo Constituency, Homa Bay County; Dungu Njenga Boys Secondary School, Limuru Constituency, Kiambu County; Jirandi Educational Center, Embakasi North Constituency, Nairobi County. They are welcome to observe proceedings in the National Assembly. Honorable John Olagwa Luoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue that has been raised by Honorable Bukose is very fundamental, and from my recollection, there's been no precedent in the National Assembly on that issue. It's coming for the first time. I also agree with your ruling, Mr. Speaker. It is quite in order. Some of members of this House are familiar with the decision of the Court of Appeal that you have referred to, but not all are familiar with it. Since it's going to set a precedent in the House, my humble request, Mr. Speaker, is that you issue that ruling by way of a formal communication to the House so that all members may have the time to consume and understand all that you have said. In my understanding, Mr. Speaker, it is very fundamental and is likely to arise again in the future unless the communication from you is made clearly for all members to understand. Thank you.
Well, yes, a formal ruling will be made, but in the meantime, given the allegations by the Honorable Bukose, I think the Committee on Implementation can get seized of the matter, but more particularly also to consider not just what is in Article 80, because Article 80 just merely gives the authority upon which the Leadership and Integrity law was made, but Article 78, as read together with sections 31 and 52 of the Leadership and Integrity Act. I think it will be important. Those are the four areas of the law that will need to be considered. While still, of course, we will be indeed quoting in extenso the decision by the Court of Appeal regarding this matter. But I think it's an important matter that should be put on record in the manner that you have suggested, Honorable Olagwa Luoch. Honorable members, I'm just saying that I'm a bit handicapped. I'm not able. My machine is not able to show me whether there is anybody who is making any intervention, and waiting for this to be rectified. I think Honorable Ochieng, David Ochieng.
2 2
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I shudder to think that what the member of Endebess has raised can even arise. You know, we are dealing with lawlessness and cases of us simply refusing to abide by the law. So, Speaker, this week has been interesting, just the second day of the week. But yesterday, we saw the DPP refusing to accept a court order. And there are so many cases in this country, Mr. Speaker, going every day, where people willfully refuse to respect the letter of the law. And so Mr. Speaker, when you made a ruling about member Endebess going to the committee, I think this is a very straightforward matter. You're going to give your ruling, yes, but if indeed any officer of government allowed this lady to appear and work in Seoul, Mr. Speaker, it would be a travesty of law and of justice, and it will be basically a spat on the face of Parliament. We've made a decision as Parliament. The courts have spoken what needs to be done. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, we don't even need to wait for this kind of situation where we know this is a fact, this has happened, and then we take a very long time to ensure that the public officers respect the law. I agree, yes, let the member appear before the relevant committee. But to do what? To do what before the committee when it's very clear what the law says? We only need to ascertain whether indeed this lady has reported. If she has, without renouncing her citizenship of America, then, Mr. Speaker, we'll be basically wasting Parliament's time. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want you to put your feet down and make it clear to the executive that the rule that you must respect the Constitution is not a choice. It's not something that someone can go around. It's not something that people can circumvent. Once the laws are made, they must be respected, Mr. Speaker. And I'm also looking forward to what the committee will say on this. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Well, of course, it is within the powers of this House to also do other things, quite apart from, it is, of course, we will not be the ones to implement that particular law. But in the detailed communication that I will be making, I will be giving some more information relating to this particular subject matter so that the House can be informed. It is important that the House get to know everything around this saga. Honorable John Bundy, I'm sorry, for today, for the time being, as I wait for the technicians to come and make corrections here, I will allow you to raise up your hand, which I normally don't allow.
Yes.
Obviously, Honorable Sankok, yes, you have raised your hand up. But I also saw the leader of the minority party raise his hand up, and he takes precedence over lesser mortals. So let us allow the, that's with a light, that is with a light touch, Honorable Sankok. Let's allow the Honorable John Bundy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to, Mr. Speaker, there is a bit of some loud consultation. But Mr. Speaker, allow me also to say this, that I want to also agree with Honorable John Olaga-Lodge, that I think, and I want to request you as well, Mr. Speaker, that this matter is precedent setting. And I think it would be important that you make...
all the members, particularly the members around the leader of majority. Now, don't bring those kind of stories. Now, the stories from churches and from funerals, don't bring them to the House, please. I have not had it in the mosques, so it is churches. So please, don't bring it to the House. Let us just deal with the issue that is it's important, as Honorable John Bundy had begun saying.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was saying before I was interrupted that I also want to plead with you that you make a comprehensive pronouncement in form of a ruling on this matter, because it's actually precedent setting. And Mr. Speaker, I still wonder whether it was, although I know this is a matter that we dealt with and disposed of and made a decision, but really I think committees need to be very clear going forward. This idea of approving appointments subject to, is it really procedural? Is it really constitutional? Is it really legal? Because I think the people of Kenya gave this House the vetting power and authority, because this is where the people's representatives sit. And therefore, the decision that we take here should be informed by law, the Constitution, and all the statutes, that when we pronounce ourselves, it should be definite. Now it's like we surrendered part of our responsibility to other authority elsewhere and waiting for that authority to execute. Now we have put ourselves in a very awkward situation, but Mr. Speaker, it is water under the bridge. I just want to ask that maybe going forward, we come out clear through your ruling that committees must make definite decisions that which, when this House approves or rejects, then we know what we have done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I think maybe what Honorable John Bandi is raising is that the House may have committed the second sin. The original sin having been committed by the nominating authority. So I think it is cause for introspection. Honorable Sankok. And be brief like the Honorable Madi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and I will be very brief, Honorable Speaker, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, we have three arms of government, and these three arms of government must respect each other. And, Honorable Speaker, Parliament, being an arm of government, had pronounced itself on the issue of Madam Mwinzi, and we had said that Mwinzi, she must renounce her citizenship. If, Honorable Speaker, by any chances that she have assumed office, Honorable Speaker, we must take drastic action as an arm of government. And I propose that Honorable Bukose follow it up and give us facts so that if need be, we can even impeach the Foreign Affairs CS because they cannot go against the pronunciation of this House. This House is an arm of government, just like the executive, just like the judiciary. And they should respect what we have pronounced as a House. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Well, the Honorable Pukosa may not be the one to follow up. The one to follow up on behalf of the House is the Committee on Implementation. But the Honorable Pukosa should appear before the committee to provide the information that he has. The Honorable Millie. Let's hear now another voice. The ones that have been up hearing are mainly this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you never go wrong when you stand on principle. And Mr. Speaker, I supported the lady Mwinzi when she was here, but my voice was in the minority. But the House spoke to it and pronounced itself. Once the House does that, that voice must be respected. But even in respecting that voice, Mr. Speaker, we must also follow the procedures and rules of the House.
For Budalangi, member for Budalangi. Member for Budalangi. Member for Budalangi, you. I think
Mr. Speaker,
this one man has made you forget the rules of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You may have stayed in Budalangi for too long. You have forgotten the rules. Continue, Honorable Millie.
Mr. Speaker, I think there is excitement. There's a spiritual excitement related to churches. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that I supported this lady when she came before the floor, but I was one of the minority voices. Once the House has pronounced itself upon it, even if I'm a minority voice, the rule of law must stand. And Mr. Speaker, if you stick by the rule of law, you need to stick knowing that it will follow you like we have seen of late. And Mr. Speaker, I would want to urge, therefore, so that we don't look like we are hounding this lady and criminalizing her and making her feel as bad as the young man who spoke on Citizen yesterday. Mr. Speaker, from Muranga, there was a young man who spoke and the English disappeared a little, and Kenyans have really been hounding him. He's a young man, Mr. Speaker, and English came in a shape. So what even if he got his English wrong? But Mr. Speaker, what I'm saying, so that we don't look like we are hounding this lady, let us not, as a House, act on rumors. Let Honorable Pokose bring evidence of what he's saying, so that even when you are making your decision, it is not made based on agenda bias. Because I've never seen so much passion and commitment in following somebody like the way we are following this lady. And I've said before, I've never met her, I don't know her even to date. But I would want us to be fair across. Whether she's in Jubilee, in ODM, which I'm told she's in Jubilee, whether she's a woman or man, let us be consistent in following our rules. Parliament must be respected, but so must we also respect our own rules. If you allege that she's taken up a position, where is the evidence that she's taken up that position? Otherwise, we are hounding this lady unnecessarily. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, the member whose hand is... there's one who appears taller than the other one. And the taller one seems to have taken...
yeah, thank you very much.
Haj.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I wanted to add my voice to this issue. Mr. Speaker, recently the Agricultural Committee on Agriculture and Livestock vetted also a chairman for Kenya Marine Fisheries Authority, where we had we found ourselves in a position where we could not make a decision at that point. And that was about the issue of tax compliance. Mr. Speaker, we were made to understand that tax compliance are issued from June to June, and that when we vetted this chairman, it was in August already. Mr. Speaker, when we did our report, we reported to the House that the chairman, subject to him being cleared from June of 2019 up to August or September, whenever time he was ready to get his appointment letter, then the chairman was qualified to get up, to be given the job, Mr. Speaker. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I think what the Parliament does is to give a guidance and framework and it is about vetting. The Parliament does not issue appointment letters to these public officers. I think at the time of issuing appointment letters to these public officers, the onus rests on those who are issuing the appointment letters to be able to get this other document, whether it is also that subject to which the Parliament has passed, that before the appointment letter is issued, the public officers are asked for all these other details, and it is at that point in time when the person who is issuing the appointment letter can be able to verify whether all the conditions have been met. So, Mr. Speaker, as Parliament, we set the guidelines, we do vetting, and I think at the time when these letters are being issued, those other finer details must be then cross-checked by those who are issuing the appointment letter. Thank you very much.
Now, now I have to balance now regions. You see, the Honorable Junet may not speak. Let me hear from ANC. The Honorable Mboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance. I think as I add my voice, a few things come out very clearly. That as Parliament and as committees, when we are doing the vetting, we need to do our work very clearly and in a very exact way, like the way Honorable Mbadi almost alluded to. Because we reach somewhere, and I like the President, because whenever we make a law here and the President feels it's not correct in his perspective, he just returns it like what we always see here. So the Parliament must also be very clear when doing its work, so that we don't become a Parliament that is too lenient. Because when we were passing the name of this lady, there was a little bit of leniency on the issue of dual citizenship. So to some extent we failed, and this is a wake-up call not only for Bokose and that committee, but the entire House, so that when we are doing the vetting and the ones of lands are here, we are very clear on the voice we give to the Kenyans. But lastly, Honorable Speaker, I must caution that it would be too early to vilify this lady too much without the proper evidence that we require, so that when we pronounce ourselves on her, we are actually basing ourselves on facts. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Now that, may I know who is the vice chair of the Committee on Implementation? Because I don't see the chairperson. The Honorable Osoti.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for that directive. I want to confirm on behalf of my chair, who is not here, that the Committee of Implementation will take up this matter and will examine all the facts around it and provide feedback to this House in the shortest time possible, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Otway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, may I, on the onset, thank you for having made a ruling on this matter. I'm also in the Committee of Defense and Foreign Relations. Mr. Speaker, the matter came to us when we were vetting Mwinzi, and CS a few weeks ago had, in her own submission to the committee, say that the training was going on, and they said designate ambassador was among those who are actually being taken through. And for sure, we raised the issue as to whether the caveat that had been passed by Parliament was effected. And to her, she said she was going to check, meaning that what Mheshimiwa Busokose is saying is true. As a member of the committee, that is what is the position, that nothing had been done, and the information she passed was that the communication that the House did it to the head of public service, and the head of public service had not communicated to her on what to do on the matter. That is the position that I, as far as I'm concerned, as a member of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee, have, and I can confirm as a fact.
Well, honourable members, maybe, because I can see that maybe not many of us are actually addressing. So I can see that we may be leaving out certain issues. But also, more importantly, Honourable Osotsi and your committee also invite before you the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, because this is a matter of ethics. Article 78 is in the Leadership and Integrity chapter. So it is they who should actually be taking up this matter. This matter is not very light. And I think it's important because it's a matter on which the second highest court on the land has expressed itself on. So, Honorable Otiende Amolo.
Okay, no, it's down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to lend my voice to this matter on which you've made a ruling, and to urge that as the committee looks at it, there are three critical things we must look at. The first, Mr. Speaker, is the decision of the court that you allude to. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, the court determined that while you could be eligible, but you cannot take the oath of office. Mr. Speaker, I urge that as a House, we examine that decision further. Because as a House, under Article 78, it says you are not eligible. Now, if you are not eligible, should this House that takes the time of all Kenyans consider a person who is not eligible for some office? I want to urge, Mr. Speaker, that this might be one of those areas where we may need to have a departure from that court decision. While the court decision is right in terms of taking the oath of office, for us we must consider whether we want to act in vain as a whole, as a House that detained the time of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, I urge that you might consider that if you are not eligible, then we cannot debate your appointment, because we'll be acting in vain. And if we debate your appointment and pass it with conditions, then we are giving the President a discretion that he does not have under the Constitution. There are many offices
where the Constitution says once we approve, then the president appoints. If we pass with conditions, then we are introducing a rider that the president then is at liberty to consider whether that condition has been met. I want to urge, Mr. Speaker, that in future we might want to reconsider that. Two, I also urge that we reconsider the conditions and preconditions that we put to some of these officers. Mr. Speaker, I was not around at the time of the debate, and of course this House acts in all its wisdom, and it must have been well instructed, but that instruction does not flow from the Constitution. On the face of the Constitution, Article 78, Article 260, that defines state officers, ambassadors are not state officers on the face of it. But in its wisdom, the court, this House decided that she had to relinquish her position. Now, while therefore it may not be expressly on the face of the Constitution, once this House makes that demand, I want to suggest that she only had two options. Either say, I do not agree, and therefore I will not take that job. But if she agrees, then she has to comply. But for us, I think it will be a question of, do we want to expand the ambit of state officers as defined in the Constitution? Because ambassadors right now are not in the Constitution. And if we do, is it wise or is it not wise? There might be perfectly situations where we might actually, and this happens in some countries, in these countries, there are states that do not have ambassadors. They have actually Kenyans acting in the place of their consulates. Is it conceivable that even we as a country might want to be in a situation where we use proxies? And if we look at that, we might want in future to reconsider our insistence that any and all ambassadors must not hold dual citizenship. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I agree with the observations to the extent that the appointment was passed with conditions. If that condition is not met, then that appointment is void ab initio. And it means whether or not she's taken the position to the extent that it does not comply with the directives of Parliament, then she would not be a substantive ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Except to hand Honorable Otiende Amolo, if you read the entire of Article 260, you will see that it gives authority for Parliament through legislation to put certain categories of offices as state officers. And that is what the Leadership and Integrity Act of 2012 did through section 52 and 31. And that's why the Court of Appeal actually departed from what is in Article 78. Many Kenyans, particularly those in the diaspora, have been only reading Article 78 and 260 without going into the Leadership and Integrity Act, which is the law, is the legislation that put ambassadors in the category of state officers. That's the only addition that there is. I see the Honorable Amalwa is burning to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when this matter was on the floor of this House, some of us really opposed it. But we followed the report of the Committee of Defense and Foreign Relations. Because in that committee, the lady, when she appeared before the committee, Mr. Speaker, she said that in case her name passes through Parliament, first thing was her to renounce the citizenship of that particular foreign country. Mr. Speaker, if this lady has already gone, that shows she has already failed the Leadership and Integrity Act test, Mr. Speaker. So without wasting too much time, we need to start the process of recalling her, because it was in the report. And I remember I questioned Honorable Lemetito, who was the chairman by then, and he repeated several times. And Honorable Millie supported the aspect of the gender, that let's allow this lady to go. We agreed that this lady will honor her word, Mr. Speaker, and even told she saw this matter has gone through Parliament. The very first thing for her to have done, Mr. Speaker, with due respect, she should have renounced. But now that she did not, we don't need to debate and waste a lot of time. An ambassador, Mr. Speaker, is a representative of the president. In terms of patriotism, we cannot allow somebody who has a dual citizenship. So we should start the process of recalling her. We have so many Kenyans who can do that job, Mr. Speaker. And of course, Mr. Speaker, it's not just the Committee of Implementation. The Committee of Defense and Foreign Relations has a role to play in this, Mr. Speaker. I thank you. Point of order.
Well, the problem is that the House has already resolved itself. And once a resolution is passed, it goes to implementation. Because then it will mean that the committee that dealt with the matter will never do anything else. Let's go to Committee on Implementation. Honorable Junet, you also want to weigh in?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You have ruled the matter properly, Mr. Speaker. That this is a matter of now implementation committee. But Mr. Speaker, I want to tell the House that one thing I'm aware that the lady was trained. You know, as a citizen, I have access to information, Mr. Speaker. Access to information is guaranteed under the Constitution. So the information that I have, Mr. Speaker, is that she has been trained as part of the ambassadors who are being trained at somewhere called Safari Park Hotel, Mr. Speaker. So that I want to share with the House. But whether she has gone to Seoul, Mr. Speaker, is a different matter. And Mr. Speaker, you know, renouncing citizenship is a very serious matter. She might be consulting her husband, her mother and sisters, and say, no, she's married, Mr. Speaker. I have the right information, Mr. Speaker. Take it from me. So, Mr. Speaker, she's consulting many of her, the people like the husband. The husband is a Mzungu first. He's not even an African, Mr. Speaker, I think. So, Mr. Speaker, the House resolution is with finality. Even though, Mr. Speaker, the House also was not very firm on the matter. Instead of disapproving it or approving it, they, you know, it's like these people who are being counted in the census that this time is called who? These ones who are not male and female, Mr. Speaker. Transgender. We gave a resolution that looks like this is transgender, that let us approve her, but subject to, Mr. Speaker. Subject to. Now, the other person who was supposed to deal with our resolution now is taking advantage of that. He's saying, now we are working on this subject to, this condition, we want to fulfill it. So the House now finds itself in a difficult situation. The House should have disapproved her and told the appointing authority, let her first renounce one citizenship and bring her back for vetting, for fresh vetting. But when we gave that transgender kind of resolution, Mr. Speaker, now the President feels now I can take my sweet time and see. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, honourable members, I think the member for Mandela, sorry. Major retired, yes?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I'm a member of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee, just like my colleague Toy has just said. Mr. Speaker, we are aware, and this information is official, that the lady underwent training like the rest of the nominees. And when we asked that how come she's undergoing training and she has not fulfilled the requirement, the information we gathered was that there's a difference between going for training and taking up office. Because you can be trained as you continue with the process of trying to take up the office, which includes trying to denounce the citizenship that this House has put in. And so we might also be here and saying that subject to, was that subject to being clarified by this House or by the executives? So we might be in a situation whereby the executive has a documentation to say the process of denouncing has started and that she has satisfied the executive up to that point and that she's able to take up that seat. However, that requires the Committee of Implementation to confirm that, yes, she has undergone for training, but has she really been deployed as an ambassador yet? So it is important that we get this clarity. As a committee, we are very focused on that. The House has passed that condition, and it is up to Committee of Implementation to confirm whether that nominee has gone to that appointment or that position. And as a committee, if that has not been fulfilled, equally we have a task to take up with the executive to confirm that somebody who has not met the conditions set by the House is assuming or reported for duty. So let us differentiate between the two, reporting for training and reporting for duty. Do we have confirmation that she has reported to the duty as an ambassador or a commissioner? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But reporting for training, to be trained as what? Anyhow, maybe that's why I saw the chair of implementation walk in. You may not have benefited from what has been said by many other members, but the matter has been referred to your committee. Honorable Olekenta, please deal with it as appropriate. Maybe, but I've said that you need Honorable Kenta because Article 78 of the Constitution is within the Leadership and Integrity Chapter, run together with the Leadership and Integrity Act, especially sections 31 and 52. You need to find out from the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission what it is that they are doing with regard to this matter. I think it may be important, even as you find out from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and any other person that may be involved in that appointment. Very well, very well, very well. Honourable members, I think we don't need to debate this matter anymore. We will be issuing a comprehensive a communication on this matter, Honourable Pukose. Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Leader of the Majority Party.
Honorable Speaker, I was talking to the ladies from Embrace, and I was telling them how they should improve in their coverage in the country and compete with the Inua. Mr. Speaker, sorry, Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, September 10th, 2019. Number 1, legal notice number 89 of 2019 on civil aviation, in bracket air accident and incident investigation regulations 2018. Number 2, legal notice number 90 of 2019 on the civil aviation, airworthiness regulations 2018. Number 3, legal notice number 91 of 2019 on civil aviation, bracket safety management, or regulation 2018. Legal notice number 92 of 2019 on civil aviation, in bracket air operator certification and administration. Number 5, legal notice number 93 of 2019 on the civil aviation approved training. Number 6, legal aviation number 94 of the civil aviation aircraft nationality and registration marks. Number 7, legal notice number 95 of 2019 on civil aviation approved personnel licensing regulations of 2018. Number 8, legal notice number 96 of 2019 on civil aviation approved maintenance organization. Number 9, legal notice number 97 of 2019 on civil aviation operations of aircraft, helicopters, regulations 2018. Number 10, legal notice number 119 of 2019 on civil aviation, aeronautical search and rescue. Number 11, legal notice number 120 of 2019 on civil aviation units of measurement to be used in air and ground operations. Legal notice number 124 of 2019 on civil aviation rules of the air, regulations 2018. Legal notice number 125 of 2019 on civil aviation certification of air navigation service providers. Number 14, legal notice number 126 of 2019 on civil aviation operations of aircraft for commercial air transport. Number 15, legal notice number 129 on the civil aviation certification, licensing, and registration of aerodromes. Number 16, legal notice number 131 of 2019 on civil aviation instruments and equipments. Number 17, legal notice number 132 on the civil aviation, in bracket, aeronautical information services. Legal notice number 133 of 2019 civil aviation on surveillance and collusion avoidance systems. Number 19, legal notice number 134 of 2019 on the civil aviation aeronautical charts. 20, legal notice number 135 of 2019 on the civil aviation communication procedures. Number 21, legal notice number 139 on the civil aviation aeronautical radio frequency spectrum utilization. Number 22, legal notice 137 of 2019 on civil aviation air traffic systems.
Number 23, legal notice number 145 on civil aviation radio navigation aids. 24, legal notice number 146 of 2019 on civil aviation communication systems. 25, legal notice number 165 of 2019 on civil aviation operations of aircraft, general aviation aeroplanes. 26, legal notice number 166 of 2019 on civil aviation meteorology services for air navigation. 27, legal notice number 167 of 2019 on civil aviation licensing of air services. 28, legal notice number 99 of 2019 on the energy licensing of petroleum road transport business amendment regulations 2019. 29, legal notice number 100 of 2019 on the petroleum in bracket liquefied petroleum gas regulations 2019. And finally, legal notice number 132 on the criteria for the determination of electricity rebate 2019 and explanatory memoranda. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next one, member of Pan-African Parliament, the Honorable Jude Jomo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, September 10th, 2019. Reports on the Kenyan delegation to the Pan-African Parliament. On 1, the report of the first ordinary session of the 5th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament held in Kigali, Rwanda on 18th October to 2nd November 2018. And 2, the report of the second ordinary session of the 5th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament held in Midrand, South Africa from 6th to 18th May 2019. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. At the appropriate time, when the reports are ready, the chair of the Finance Committee, Finance and Planning Committee, the Honorable Limo, will be permitted to table the report of its committee today, this afternoon. When the reports are ready, Honorable Limo, when the reports are ready today, you will be required to table them. Yes. Very well. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Proceed. Honorable Jude Jomo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House notes the reports of the Kenyan delegation to the Pan-African Parliament on the 5th ordinary session of the 5th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament held in Kigali, Rwanda from 18th October to 2nd of November 2018, and the second ordinary session of the 5th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament held in Midrand, South Africa from 6th to 18th May 2019, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, September 10th, 2019. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
First question, honorary questions. The Honorable Member for Matayos, Honorable Ndanga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is question 355 of 2019 to the Cabinet Secretary for Education and Research. 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide details of the implementation of the adult education program in the country, including funding, administration, and the number of persons enrolled in the program per county? And 2, what measures has the Ministry put in place to popularize adult education in counties in order to give a second chance to the Kenyans who dropped out of school for various reasons and who wish to improve their literacy levels? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, to be responded to before the Committee on Education and Research. Next question by the member for Murang'a County.
Yes, exactly.
You appear to be still over the weekend. Now that it's about Murang'a County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to ask the question. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the construction of Kanyenyeine to Karurumo Road, which serves thousands of farmers, traders, and motorists in accessing Kanyenyeine Tea Factory, Gakera, and Kanyenyeine Market have stalled despite having been funded? And second, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that the said road is constructed and completed on time? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, to be responded to before the Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. Next question by the member for Lamu East, Honorable Sharif Adman Ali.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to standing order, so the provision standing order 42A, I wish to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works, what is the status of the compensation to persons affected by the acquisition of land for the development of Lamu Port, South Sudan, Ethiopia Transport Lapset Corridor project in Lamu? Number two, what plans has the ministry put in place to ensure that affected persons in Kwasasi area in Lamu are compensated? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So the question will be responded to before the Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. Next question by the member for Bonchari, Honorable John Oro Oyoka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Health the following question. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain how the National Hospital Insurance Fund Kenya shillings 500 for self-employed persons and 150 shillings for people who are employed and earning not more than 5,999 Kenya shillings, as stipulated in the legal notice number 14 of 2015, the National Hospital Insurance Fund Standard and Special Contributions Regulations of 2015 were arrived at. Number two, could the Cabinet Secretary consider classifying self-employed persons into various categories based on the amount of their earnings? Three, are there plans to address challenges faced by the majority of self-employed persons whose gross income is below 5,999 per month in paying the stipulated premiums? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question to be responded to before the Departmental Committee on Health. Next question by the member for Bomet County, Joyce Coril.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 42A5, I wish to ask the following question. That could the Cabinet Secretary provide details concerning the recently introduced Fulisa services by the Safaricom Limited, including its credit-related mechanisms and overall financing systems? Two, what is the legal status of the service and its impact to the country's economy? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well, to be responded to before the Departmental Committee on Information, Communications and Innovation. Next question by the member for Baringo Central, the Honorable Joshua Chepegon Kandie. The Honorable Kandie.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 382 of 2019, and this question is directed to Cabinet Secretary for Education, Science and Technology. One, could the Cabinet Secretary consider waiving outstanding school fees arrears for over 500 students from various secondary schools in Baringo Central? who graduated between 2000 and 2016, whose parents, guardians cannot afford to clear their arrears? 2, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why examination certificates for various former students continue to be held by various schools on account of outstanding fees arrears, contrary to the law? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The question will be responded to before the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, report of the Committee of the Whole House of the National Drought Management Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of 2019. Question to be put and third reading.
Very well, honour members. Honour members. Honour members, as you know, there is a requirement that we must have quorum before a question is put. I confirm that we have quorum, and I therefore put the question, which is that the House do agree with the report of the Committee of the Whole House on its consideration of the National Drought Management Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of 2019. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Will as many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. Over.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the National Drought Management Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of 2019, be now read a third time. I request Honorable Washiali to second.
Honorable Washiali.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I second.
I propose the question, which is that the House to agree with the committee in the same report. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. No, next. That was for agreement. The first one was for agreement. Honour members, I propose the question, which is that the National Drought Management Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of 2019, be now read a third time. As there's no comments, I therefore proceed to put the question, which is that, having confirmed that there's still quorum, that the drought management, I put the question, which is that the National Drought Management Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of 2019, be now read a third time. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of Parliament to amend the National Drought Management Authority Act 2016. Order number 9, the Sectional Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2019. Question to be put.
Again, honour members, debate on this bill was concluded when the House last debated it, and what remained was for the question to be put for second reading, which I hereby do. That the Sectional Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2019, be now read a second time. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. As many of the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the division of buildings into units to be owned by individuals, proprietors, and common property to be owned by proprietors of the units as tenants in common, and to provide for the use of and management of the units and common property and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Refugees National Assembly Bill number 62 of 2019, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the recognition, protection, and management of refugees, to give effect to the 1951 United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees, the 1967 Protocol relating to the status of refugees, and the 1969 OAU Convention governing the specific aspects of refugee problems in Africa and for connected purposes.
Before we move to the next order, honorable members, allow me, as I indicated earlier, to reorganize business of the House for the convenience of the House, so as to enable the chairperson or chairman of the Departmental Committee on Finance and Planning to table some 2 reports from his committee relating to some crucial bills pending before the House. Honorable Limo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, September 10, 2019. Reports of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on its consideration of 1, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 63 of 2019, and 2, the Senate amendments to the County Government's Retirement Scheme Bill, National Assembly Bill number 10 of 2018. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Next order.
By 11, motion, approval of ratification of protocol to amend the Convention of Offenses and certain acts committed on board aircraft, Montreal Protocol 2014.
The Chairman, Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing, Honorable Posing.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this earliest opportunity after recess, Honorable Speaker, to move this motion. That, Honorable Speaker, the House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing on its consideration of the protocol to amend the Convention of Offenses and certain acts committed on board aircraft, mainly known, Honorable Speaker, as Montreal Protocol 2014, for ratification, laid on the floor of the House Thursday, June 6th, 2019, and pursuant, Honorable Speaker, to Section 8 of Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the ratification of the protocol to amend the Convention on Offenses and certain acts committed on board aircraft, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I move, this is a very critical amendment, Honorable Speaker, and it is really straightforward. So what are we amending, Honorable Speaker? What is the protocol that we are presenting as a committee before the House for ratification? What is it saying, Honorable Speaker? It's clearly amending Tokyo Convention of 1963. So the question then begs, what was that convention saying? Honorable Speaker, that convention of 1963, Tokyo Convention of 1963, Honorable Speaker, was giving authorities on how to deal with unruly passengers, Honorable Speaker, on board an aircraft. So what were these offenses, Honorable Speaker? As members might have seen in our report, Honorable Speaker, these offenses are as follows, Honorable Speaker. These include physical assault or a threat to commit such an assault against a crew member and refusal to follow lawful instructions given by or on behalf of the aircraft commander for safety purposes, Honorable Speaker. Those are the offenses which then the Montreal Convention of 1963, Honorable Speaker, attempted to address. It further, Honorable Speaker, proceeded to recognizing that airlines have a right
to and may seek compensation from unruly passengers for costs incurred as a result of their unruly behavior, where this involves diversion to disembark or unruly passengers. And Honorable Speaker, recognizing that states may establish an in-flight security officer program, Honorable Speaker, on bilateral and multilateral terms, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, why are we seeking this amendment? We are seeking the amendment, Honorable Speaker, because, very important, because the Tokyo Convention of 1963 limits the jurisdiction to take action of offenses and other acts committed on board aircraft to states to Honorable Speaker, to state of registration of the aircraft in question. This is very critical, Honorable Speaker, that convention only recognized states of registration, meaning if the aircraft is registered in this country, then therefore the power and the jurisdiction to take action on the offenses which are earlier stated, Honorable Speaker, then is bestowed upon the state of registration, Honorable Speaker. That is like in Kenya. However, Honorable Speaker, what that convention then forgot, which this Montreal 2014 protocol is attempting to do, Honorable Speaker, it forgot states of landing and also, Honorable Speaker, state of operator. What does that mean, Honorable Speaker? Simply it means that an aircraft or a plane, Honorable Speaker, may be registered, for example, in South Africa, but is operating in Kenya. So meaning earlier, before this protocol, before we approve it as a House, Honorable Speaker, it then means that if there is unruly passenger on an aircraft that is registered in South Africa and operating in Kenya, then it means that the jurisdiction to take action on that passenger lies in South Africa. So what happens when that passenger is in this country? This country has no jurisdiction, Honorable Speaker, to then punish that passenger. So what does that mean, Honorable Speaker? It means that that unruly passenger committing crimes goes without being punished by law, Honorable Speaker. That is what the 1963 convention was saying. Number two, Honorable Speaker, also, it didn't recognize state of landing. What does it mean, Honorable Speaker? It means that if there is unruly passenger, you are flying, for example, from Lagos in Nigeria, and you are going, maybe, Honorable Speaker, to Middle East, and therefore you are overflying Kenya. And then in between, maybe in Congo, or maybe in Uganda, or on the airs of Uganda, there might be an unruly passenger, or passenger that is, as I said, commits the offenses which I have just earlier said, Honorable Speaker. So what happens? If that plane lands, Honorable Speaker, in Jomo Kenyatta or Kenya, then we call that state of landing. However, Honorable Speaker, without this Montreal protocol, then it means that Kenya, Honorable Speaker, has no jurisdiction to punish that passenger. So what happens? Will people go with the unruly passenger? Will that really assure them their security? It will not, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, in its own wisdom, the country's Honorable Speaker, and then what happened is, in this protocol, which I'm presenting on the floor of the House for my committee, or on behalf of my committee, Honorable Speaker, then extends the jurisdiction to those two types of states, meaning state of landing and state of operator. And then that becomes very clear, Honorable Speaker, that if the House approves our report, and this protocol becomes law, as it is stipulated in our Constitution, that once the House adopts it, it forms part of our law, and that means, Honorable Speaker, it assures more security, even to passengers overflying our nation, or, Honorable Speaker, any aircraft that maybe seeks an emergency landing because there is an unruly passenger on board, Honorable Speaker. That is exactly, Honorable Speaker, specifically what this amendment, Honorable Speaker, is seeking. It is very, very clear, Honorable Speaker. It is direct. It is as simple as I've just said, Honorable Speaker. So why did countries sought to punish these unruly passengers, Honorable Speaker? Might be a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons, of course, Honorable Speaker, you know that this world, we are living in what you call terrorist era. You never know, Honorable Speaker, at what level will maybe a passenger behave or become a terrorist or behave like a terrorist, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, that endangers hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of people, Honorable Speaker, flying. Of course, you know, flying has become one of the major transport item, Honorable Speaker, that when people travel, of course, most people travel on air. But how do you assure them their security? Because of these issues of terrorism, Honorable Speaker, that is why then people who met in Montreal, of course, under ICAO, Honorable Speaker, and ICAO again is sitting from next week to regulate and give directions on how to promote safety, Honorable Speaker, in the whole world in terms of people flying. And therefore, because of this, what I call the regime of threats of terrorism, this is a very important amendment, Honorable Speaker, that I will be asking the House on behalf of my committee that we adopt this report, Honorable Speaker. And then it assures other people who are flying to our country security or overflying our country security, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, people can overfly our country. And of course, Honorable Speaker, people will know, and if they don't know, I would like them to know that when people overfly our country, they pay. And therefore, when we have this on board, Honorable Speaker, it means that many people will choose to overfly our country, because if anything happens, then they can land in our country, disembark that unruly passenger, and our country will be so seized of the matter in law, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, that puts our country in another level in terms of flying and addressing the issues of terrorism, Honorable Speaker. Number two, one of the reasons, Honorable Speaker, why this is very crucial, and my committee, on behalf of my committee, Honorable Speaker, I'm asking the House to agree with us, is that we are now expanding our networks, Honorable Speaker. And of course, through Kenya Airways, we are expanding our networks. You might see my committee shortly, when given an opportunity, we will be seeking permission to even land other countries, Honorable Speaker. But when we are expanding our networks, one of the conditions people might be asking when we are asking that we land in their country is whether we have also adopted this protocol to assure citizens of the world security in our country, and whether we are within international requirements in terms of taking unruly passengers as it is required by law, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, it really fits. It has come at the right time. Of course, people will be asking what happened from 1963 to today that we are amending. And of course, Honorable Speaker, that will be answered by other people. I'm sure that will not be myself. But because I'm addressing this issue, Honorable Speaker, yes, I want to assure the House that we are, as a country, of course, you know what the report we passed before we went for recess, Honorable Speaker. We passed a report to nationalize Kenya Airways. Why were we nationalizing? So that we are able to get and travel more countries and bring more people to our country and also increase our economy, Honorable Speaker. In that respect, therefore, this protocol, should it be approved by the House, Honorable Speaker, will then fit in very well within our expansion and our building Kenya Airways, Honorable Speaker. Third, Honorable Speaker, why we are doing it, of course, the world is becoming one. You know, under ICAO, you know, the world, of course, in aviation, is being managed or regulated by one organization, which is ICAO, Honorable Speaker. So, because the world is becoming one in terms of aviation, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, we become nations of the nations. We become one of the nations, Honorable Speaker, that have approved these protocols, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, we are also putting ourselves in the League of Nations, Honorable Speaker. And of course, you know this country, in this part of the world, which is Africa, that Kenya is a very important connection up, Honorable Speaker. We thank God for putting us here. If you are in Nairobi, you take east, almost it is the same flight to go to America as it is to go to Japan. So we are in the middle, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, for us as a country adopting this and approving this ratification, Honorable Speaker, that gives then the countries possibilities of addressing or expanding it from not only nations of registration, but also nations of landing and nations of operation, Honorable Speaker. In that way, Honorable Speaker, we know what does that mean. It means, therefore, another country can come and invest in our country. You can register your plane in another country like maybe Egypt or whatever, but since we have adopted this regulation or this protocol, Honorable Speaker, then somebody might want to say, I want to come and invest in Nairobi. His plane is registered in another country, but he wants to operate in Nairobi. Why? Because the framework of addressing or punishing unruly passengers, Honorable Speaker, is as equivalent as it is in their country, that is country of registration, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, this is a very important amendment, Honorable Speaker. It is very clear. As I've just suggested, it's a small amendment, but very weighty. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude this presentation, then it begs the question whether this protocol followed the right procedures in terms of protocols that are supposed to be approved by the House. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the Constitution, of course, these protocols are guided by Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012, and specifically, Honorable Speaker, Section 8, which then gives the road on how these protocols, of course, that's from executive, that is a cabinet, then it comes to Parliament through memorandum. I want to confirm, Honorable Speaker, this protocol came into the House in a procedural manner, Honorable Speaker, as it is provided for by the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, Honorable Speaker, and particularly Section 8 of that piece of legislation or law, Honorable Speaker. Yes, Honorable Speaker, the Constitution, Article 118, provides for public participation, Honorable Speaker. Did this protocol went for public participation? Yes, Honorable Speaker. I want to confirm to the House that yes, we published in the newspapers for people to make contributions, Honorable Speaker. The ministry and all other stakeholders, Honorable Speaker, made their presentations to my Honorable Committee. And we prosecuted, and they were very, very well informed about this protocol, Honorable Speaker. And they only requested that we fast-track this protocol, Honorable Speaker, so that then our country can do the things which I have just suggested, Honorable Speaker. With those many of few remarks, Honorable Speaker, as it is clear, and I want to confirm to the House, that it followed the right road to be in this House, it followed the law to be in this House, Honorable Speaker, as it is, of course, in our report of my committee, and I want to thank my committee, Honorable Speaker, for prosecuting this matter. And with those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, and then I beg to move this very small amendment, but very critical amendment, Honorable Speaker, and I ask my colleague, Honorable Shadrach Mose, to second the report, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
Honorable Mose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance to second this very important amendment. And I would like, Honorable Speaker, before I sit down, to also make my few comments in addition to what the chairman has said. Honorable Speaker, it is clear and evident that the issue of insecurity when we travel all over the world is an emerging issue. And what this amendment seeks to do is to ensure, Honorable Speaker, that the issues of safety and security are enhanced. And therefore, this amendment will, no doubt, add a lot of value in terms of the contribution that it will add to travel. Honorable Speaker, we did deliberate on these issues. Honorable Speaker, before I proceed, I want to appreciate and recognize man of the moment, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, for his welcome to the House. Let's give him a rousing welcome. And while, Honorable Speaker, I am on my feet, I also want to congratulate Honorable Ndindi Nyoro for his, confidence and in the manner in which he has handled issues that have surrounded his, representation of his constituents in Kiharu. We want to thank you, and we also want to say that, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, you should stand firm and steadfast in efforts to ensure that you represent your people effectively, without intimidation, without any coercion, to ensure that the people of Kiharu who chose you get their fair share of what is required. And that, Honorable Speaker, while I am still on my feet, it is becoming a matter of great concern. It's becoming a matter of serious concern on how members of Parliament are handled. And I would urge us members that we unite in our cause to ensure that the integrity and the respect that goes with the positions that you hold is not whittled down, but is given the respect and the decorum that is required. Honorable Speaker.
Now go back to business.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to go back to business and say that the Committee of Transport ensured that it looked at the amendment and had an opportunity to go through it very carefully, very articulately, very diligently, so that when one is on board, when one is boarding, or when one is landing, his security is protected. And this is in line with the various acts and the legislations that we looked at. As Chairman has said, Honorable Speaker, we ensured that Article 118(1)(b) of the Constitution, that is in respect of public participation, the amendment was advertised. We received views from the ministry, and therefore we were completely satisfied that this amendment is extremely critical, and will be urging the House to support this amendment. With that, I support. I second, sorry.
Honourable members, I propose a question, which is that this House adopts a report of the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing on its consideration of the protocol to amend the Convention of Offences and certain acts committed on board aircraft, in brackets, Montreal Protocol of 2014, close the brackets, for ratification, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, June 6, 2019, and pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the ratification of the protocol to amend the Convention on Offences and certain acts committed on board aircraft, in brackets, Montreal Protocol 2014. Honourable members, answering the Honourable Baya. If I follow the list, Baya not there, Omboko Milemba, Wahongu Wamalwa, Nzamba Kidua. I'm following the list. Ole Sankok.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, allow me to recognize the most important and famous person currently in our country, Honorable Dindi Nyoro, having just walked. And Honorable Speaker, through you, Honorable Speaker, because I support this particular amendment, I also want to advise the Interior Security Ministry that when there is a little shove and push in the church, it needs some spiritual cleansing, not policeman intervention, and does not require, because some of these spiritual things cannot be dealt with tear gas and guns. They can be dealt with spiritually. I've just advised Honorable Dindi Nyoro, together with the Honorable Commander, to come before a bishop or a pastor for prayers instead of such drama. And so, even me myself, I was ready to pray for them. Honorable Speaker, I do second this particular, I do support this particular amendment, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, because in the light of threats of terrorism, drug trafficking, and child trafficking, which of course the very important media of such trafficking is air transport, Honorable Speaker, we need to globalize these laws of dealing with Rudy passengers inside or on board our transport system, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I believe this is an idea that I have delayed. It is an idea whose time have come, Honorable Speaker, because if there is an unruly passenger inside the aeroplane or on board the aeroplane, Honorable Speaker, and he can or she can only be dealt with by the country of registration of that airline, Honorable Speaker. And we know that the whole world have become a global village, Honorable Speaker. We travel east, we travel west, Honorable Speaker, in a matter of hours, Honorable Speaker. And we travel above so many other countries, Honorable Speaker. Our aeroplanes land in so many other countries, Honorable Speaker. And sometimes it is an emergency because the passenger, of course, threats to the lives of all those on board, Honorable Speaker. And considering that some of these aeroplanes are larger aeroplanes that carry population to up to 400 passengers, Honorable Speaker, the rights of this passenger and Rudy's passenger should stop where the right of the other passengers start, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we cannot risk as a world to put our passengers, very good passengers who have paid their money to travel to various parts of this country in business or to visit their families or in terms of education, Honorable Speaker. We cannot put their lives at risk simply because of one Rudy passenger, Honorable Speaker, who cannot be dealt with by any other country or laws of any other country apart from the laws of the country of registration of that airline. Honorable Speaker, so I commend the Transport Committee for coming up with this international instrument, which I believe we should, as a House, adapt and ratify so that we can also be competitive in the world market, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, because the world, apart from thinking of the fastest mode of transport, Honorable Speaker, they also think of the safest mode of transport, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, those who travel in aeroplanes are, Honorable Speaker, mostly passengers who have greater risk in terms of hijacking, in terms of business rivalry, Honorable Speaker, and in terms of drug trafficking, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, we should, as a House, support this committee because the recommendations are well in front of this House, as the chairman have alluded to, that they have followed all the required channels to bring this before this House, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, I do support 100% that we ratify this international instrument so that very many investors can come and invest in our country because they feel that we are part of and parcel of the whole global village in terms of air transport. So thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I do support.
Member for Kadhiani.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also want to support the approval of the ratification of the protocol to amend the Convention on Offenses and Certain Acts committed on board aircraft that was passed in Montreal, the Montreal Protocol of 2014. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, Mr. Speaker, this issue is an issue that is not just concerning our country, but goes way beyond our borders, because this is a protocol that has many other nations behind it. And Mr. Speaker, our Constitution clearly states that once we ratify a protocol, it becomes part and parcel of the laws of this nation. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that it is important for our country, because we are no longer operating on our own, but within a global village, which means basically the world has been condensed by technology and, of course, the movement of people and resources. So I think it's important that as a nation, we approve the amendment to the protocol so that we can also be able to compete or to operate with the rest of the nation. Mr. Speaker, it's shocking when you listen to the chair and the things that he raised about the kind of resources. Mr. Speaker, I wish to ask for your protection, because the House this afternoon has almost become a circus, because we saw one of our members, the one who was fighting in a church, he walked in and everybody was celebrating. And I thought, are we losing our Christianity? As a strong Christian, anyone who fights in a church should not be revered, and people should not be celebrating them. So basically, Mr. Speaker, or the lawyer of the person who was fighting in church has also been cheered. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that when you listen to the chair, I realize that apparently there is a lot of there are gray areas within international travel, and on those people that create issues and are unruly in aeroplanes. And obviously, considering that not only do we have the threat of terrorism, we also have other risks, like people who would want to travel, and probably the issue of movement of communicable diseases like Ebola and others. I think it's important to empower those that are managing these airlines so that they can be able to ensure that the laws are followed within the aeroplane. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support and urge that our colleagues also support this protocol. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Ijara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this very important international instrument. I want to support from onset the Committee of Transport, and I want to tell them, again, I want to congratulate them for bringing this instrument. The other day, they brought the issue of our airline, Kenya Airways, the pride of Africa, and we discussed at length, and we supported that Kenya Airways must be transformed and must go to the next level in terms of its operation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a country that needs a lot of investment, it is important that when it comes to issue of security, issue of safety, it is our responsibility as a house to look critically how we can support anything that touching on the security of this country and its citizens and the passengers who pass over our countries, Mr. Speaker, and the airlines that come over to our countries. And because of that, Mr. Speaker, I support this instrument, the international instrument that is going to be amended. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we are trying to expand our networks. And when we are expanding our networks, and when we are entering new agreements with other international companies and countries, then we need also to appreciate globally that we are turning to be a village. And being a village, we are trying to connect and relate to every country and other people, Mr. Speaker. And because of that, the security of every individual globally that we interact with is very key, Mr. Speaker. And as a country, if something happens with another airline within our soils and we have not appreciated this instrument, then it is going to look bad on us, Mr. Speaker. So it is important that we support as a country, and this House today appreciate this particular very important instrument that is addressing issues of passengers, addressing issues of airlines and interrelations globally with our people. The other important thing, Mr. Speaker, that this amendment will bring on board is economic growth for our country. We'll be able to grow because of creating an environment which is security-free. Then people will be very comfortable to come and do business with us, Mr. Speaker. People will be able to come and invest in our country, Mr. Speaker. And because of that, and because security is the most important thing, and that's why anytime issues touching security comes on board, we need collectively to stand together to support so that we are able to sell our country. You know, when we are talking about security, we are talking about an enabling environment, an environment that is good, an environment that takes care of everybody, an environment that has protected its citizens and beyond its citizens, then we'll be able to say and appreciate that our country is one of the first countries that will be able to attract investors, Mr. Speaker, because we are taking care of their security. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support this particular international instrument. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much.
Member for Baringo County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm also...
Honourable members, the member for Kikuyu, I am following the list that appears here. It doesn't appear like there is no indication that your card has been stolen, as I have heard you shout. I'm following the list, and I can tell you from this list, the next person is the member for Seme. So that is the way it is.
Mr. Speaker,
Please
sir.
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I hope he has not eaten on to my time. But I want also, Mr. Speaker, sir, to rise and support this amendment that has been brought by the Committee of Transport. Because this, Mr. Speaker, sir, if actually this amendment is going to be done and goes through, it is one of the best things, because all of us, in one way or another, travel. I must say I've once experienced an unruly passenger on an aircraft, and it wasn't very nice, and somehow the attendants had very little to do with him, and he was on transit. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we look at globalization currently, this world is globalized. People are transversing from one continent to another, one country to the other, and it is important that actually issue security of the aircraft when we are airborne are taken care of, so that when people are actually aboard, they are not deemed to think that they are free and they can do what they are able to do without being actually taken as an offense. The crimes which happen up above or at the board in the aircrafts, there could be many. And for sure, we are living in a situation in this world whereby terrorism can be executed anywhere. It can be at the airport, it can be when we are aboard, and even if people have been scrutinized or checked seriously that they don't have some weapons, some people can decide even to use their hands and hurt others. So for me, Mr. Speaker, sir, this Montreal Protocol 2014 and its amendment is worthy being done, because even as the transnational crimes that are done on the land, it is important that they are applied up at the boat, at the aircraft, so that people are convinced that actually when they are traveling, nobody can go against their will. No one can step on their feet because they think they are free and they cannot be done anything. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, for my case, I want to support this. It is important that this Departmental Committee on Transport actually goes ahead and brings forth these amendments so that, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we are traveling globally, we feel safe, we feel protected, and we know that offenses done there can actually be charged without somebody feeling that they can hurt or offend anyone without them being taken anywhere. Mr. Speaker, sir, even as they do this, I also would suggest that on the same, we have issues, health, which also affect people at the aircraft. It is important also we look at that, because it is also on the transport. It is one time when we were traveling, I remember we were with Dr. Nyikal, and somebody collapsed in the aircraft. When he collapsed, there was no doctor, there was nothing that could be done, and having known that we are with Dr. Nyikal, I very fast ran to him to come and actually save the patient. But later on, I discovered it has some legal connotations, and the doctor was not he was very uneasy to assist, because in case of anything, he would have been blamed. So as they do this also, let's look at the health of the people also when they are when they are aboard in the aircraft, so that we see how best they can be handled when we have emergencies. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to actually support this and that the chair and the committee of on transport may continue amending this, that we may get things that befit us while we are traveling. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
I confirm your time was not eaten. Honorable Nyikar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to give me the opportunity to contribute to this. This is an extremely important motion that seeks the ratification of the bilateral air services, the ratification of the protocol to amend the Convention of Offences and Certain Acts committed on the board, the so-called Montreal Protocol. Mr. Speaker, this is an important amendment because it gives control and power of management of unruly passengers and any other activities of that nature in an aircraft to the countries where the aircraft will land, and not just the country or state of operator. So, Speaker, imagine if you were to stick to the old convention that stated that the person can only be dealt with in the country of the operator, and people are mid-air, and there is an unruly person. Either the plane would have to fly back to the country of the operator to have this, or if the person, they landed for the safety of the patients and left the unruly person in another country, he would go scot-free. Perhaps he would then have to be sent back. And, Mr. Speaker, air travel has actually globalized the world. And it is the most efficient means of transport across countries. And, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you technically, air travel is the safest means of transport, much, much, much safer than a car. In fact, statistically, you are safer in a plane than in a hospital from any technical error. It means it is very unlikely that a technical error will occur in a plane to jeopardize the security of the patient, much more so than in a hospital. And, Mr. Speaker, this is due to the very strict standard operating procedures in airlines that are really adhered to and are amended from time to time when there are any new events. And this safety is because of that strictness and diligence. And, Mr. Speaker, any small event in the air is likely to cause a major disaster. And in these days of terrorism, where the terrorists have adopted systems that does not even need the weapons that we look for, when a mere disturbance in the cockpit is actually likely to make a plane crash. Mr. Speaker, we even know of suicidal persons who have actually tried to use airlines to actually commit suicide and kill with them large numbers of people. It is therefore mandatory that there is need for fast action, diligent action, not only in the airline, but also to the country where the airline may decide to land at the time of such event. Mr. Speaker, this is the only way we can actually protect air transport, which is actually a big means of business. It's like tourism to countries, to airlines, to airports. So this is, apart from protecting the lives of people, also protects the integrity of air transport as a whole. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, there is need for maximum security and for empowerment of the commanders of the flights and to countries that they are flying over to, at any one time required, take up the matter and deal with persons that are unruly. Mr. Speaker, this will give crew, the pilot and their crew, the opportunity to land anywhere at any time without any fear, being aware and sure that the offender will be actually apprehended, dealt with the full jurisdiction of the laws of the country in which the plane lands at the time of that emergency. Mr. Speaker, we cannot overemphasize that. As Honorable Gladwell just said, This, of course, does not extend to things like health issues, but it is true. I once had to take care of a patient in an airline, and the truth is, if you do, you must also be subject to some rules and registration procedures. But I don't think that is taken care of here, but it's something that we may have to look at in these air transport conventions. So, Mr. Speaker, I do support the amendment so that Kenya will be part of the international world where air transport is felt to be safe, so planes will fly over Kenya without any fear that should they have a problem, they will not know how to deal with the unruly passengers or any other activity that is going on in the airline. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion that seeks to amend the protocol. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Udaya. Member for Buri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm part of this committee that looked at these amendments. And from the onset, I want to say the Montreal Protocol is meant to bring sanity in the way the air transport is done. Mr. Speaker, I know when it comes to bring into operation this protocol, the second thing is to standardize the safety measures of all aircraft operators. Mr. Speaker, we cannot underestimate the importance of having clear and standardized security measures on board. Mr. Speaker, I am aware that the word unruly is quite diverse. But what we are saying here is that as long as the passenger on board is not conforming to the requirements on how to conduct himself or herself in the airplane, then the passengers, other passengers on board, they are in danger. So, Mr. Speaker, this amendment is very critical because what is going to happen is that all operators are going to have standard measures of security within the aircraft. Mr. Speaker, there are different operators of aircraft. I know we are only talking on passengers, but also we are talking about cargo planes. And when it comes to the security, the measures the aircraft operator is going to take into consideration will be universal as far as the protocol is concerned. Mr. Speaker, just like my colleagues have said, the aircraft need to be the most safe place to travel, safe transport means. And therefore, we cannot, as Kenyan, seen not to be part of those safety measures that are going to guarantee safety of the travelers who use our space, who use KQ and the other operators in the country. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a very important protocol, and I beg to support as part of the committee, and I ask the members, please, we pass this protocol. But before I sit down, I would like to congratulate my brother, Didi Nyolo, for standing firm. He has demonstrated, or rather, through him, we have seen an opportunity of proving how bad our security systems are, how bad the security organs misuse the resources on security, how our state organs in charge of protecting Kenyans, they are arresting people at night, and more so, it has proved that these guys are not good, they are not there for the truth. The accusation leveled against Didi Nyolo were purely lies.
Now,
therefore, Mr. Speaker,
just a minute.
Mr. Speaker, I support this. That was just declared to congratulate my brother.
No. Honourable members, let me tell you why the rules of relevance are important. Now you know you are debating a specific motion. Anybody reading your contributions in future, 30 years from now, will be asking, maybe that will be your grandson, and you'll be asking, Ella, how was my grandfather how was he coordinating things? So please, when you want to contribute the other one, you know, we can create an opportunity. But in order to avoid a situation whereby you know your contributions will look funny. Honorable Sotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to also contribute to this very important motion on the ratification of this treaty. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this treaty, it's going to be very important because it's going to further enhance aviation security, which is a very, very important issue, especially for airlines and the passengers and governments and business people all over the world. Mr. Speaker, this treaty talks about unruly passengers. Mr. Speaker, the cases of unruly passengers are on the increase. And according to statistics, majority of these cases are unruly passengers who are intoxicated alcohol. And Mr. Speaker, as you are aware that there is no limit on some airlines on the amount of alcohol that is sold to passengers in flight and even in those restaurants at the airport. And I think one of the things that stakeholders in the industry needs to engage is to whether they should have alcohol at all on airlines. Because as you are aware, smoking is not allowed on airlines, but alcohol is allowed. There is no limit, and in most cases you find that we have passengers who are highly intoxicated because of alcohol. There is also no proper screening of passengers who are drunk. And you find someone getting into an aeroplane, heavily drunk, and causing a lot of trouble on the flight. So I think one of the things that they need to look at, the stakeholders in the industry, is in the issue how to manage unruly passengers who are drunk. I know most airlines make a lot of their sales. In fact, it's estimated that 50% of the in-flight sales are from sale of alcohol products. There must be a clear balance because I think the safety of passengers is more important than that sale of alcohol to passengers. But Mr. Speaker, the most important thing is to look at other aspects of this treaty, which is this treaty gives airlines and any other person who's affected by unruly conduct of a passenger the right to seek compensation from these unruly passengers. And the compensation can arise from a number of instances. For example, delayed flight. We have cases of diverted flights. We have cases of canceled flights, and these are costly. So someone has to pay for that. So this treaty is very clear that passengers, airlines, and government will have the right to seek compensation from the unruly passengers for the cost incurred as a result of the unruly conduct. I think that's very important. The treaty also provides mechanisms for managing in-flight security to manage passengers who are clearly unruly. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important aspect in terms of enhancing aviation industry. But Mr. Speaker, I want to comment on one issue which was recently reported in our newspapers about the scandal at Kenya Airways, luggage scandal involving staff, where they clear luggage after receiving some compensation from some passengers. Mr. Speaker, this can be a serious issue of security because that means that the weight limit is not managed, is not controlled, and therefore you end up having overloaded flight, which means can cause an accident anytime. I think this is an issue that we want to ask the government to investigate and deal with this matter, because lives of many people, Kenyans and also passengers from other countries, it is going to be at risk. And at this time when we are saying we need KQ to start making profits, we need KQ to stay afloat, we cannot do that if we are having that kind of credibility, that we have staff and people at KQ who are involved in luggage scandal. That is a very serious issue, and I think the Committee on Transport, with the able chair who is here, this is a matter that you need to interrogate and give a report to this Parliament so that we know the truth around it. Because as we are struggling with KQ to make it stay afloat, we cannot allow such things to happen. Things that can easily ruin the company KQ. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I support this motion. Thank you.
The Honorable Mabonga, member for Bumula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. From onset, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the committee for coming up with this ratification of the treaty, which is so timely in this era. Mr. Speaker, today as we speak, we are living in a global village. And you realize that, Mr. Speaker, right now, even in some flights, the communication space has increased, that you get into an airline or airport, and you will find that you have Wi-Fi even in the space. And that way, we will have even some people who have maybe ill intentions to stay on communication. Mr. Speaker, we live in an era that we have a lot of terrorism, which actually most of the lives have been lost through such acts. In the same manner, Mr. Speaker, this idea of trafficking, and my friends have mentioned about it. These honorable members, thanks for correction number one, nominee number one. Of course, you can be an honorable member and remain a friend. So with all these issues happening around the world, Mr. Speaker, it's very important that people who have such motives and they are passengers, they are tried at any stage of the offense. We have cases that you end an airline whereby people actually, they are drunkard and you are traveling with them and you become very uncomfortable. And at times you may lack peace in the whole flight, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, if we have this kind of ratification, I think we are creating a very important aviation security, that our airlines, we are complying with other airlines internationally, and most of the passengers will be more safe. It's very important to note that, Mr. Speaker, whenever somebody makes arrangements for traveling, you are so secure, you always make that assumption that you are secure. But at times when you get on the airline and you find this kind of people and you have nowhere to report, it becomes a challenge. Besides actually making those kind of ratification that we comply with the international standards, Mr. Speaker, it's very important also that as much as the airline may take precautions, we should have in it an element of compensation, because at times when you are harassed, when you have no peace, and by the time maybe you get into the next stopover, you are likely to have, actually they may have misconvenience to you in one way or the other. You realize that some people even travel, Mr. Speaker, for medical reasons. And if you do not have peace on an airline the whole time that you're traveling, that is something that the airline must look into it. So the element of compensation must come in. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a very important ratification that we comply with the international standards as a country, and it's very important for us to ensure that every time the citizens of this country or anybody traveling for that matter is secure. I support this treaty ratification, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, the Honorable Mabonga, we'll now have a contribution from the Honorable Obo Mohammed, who is also has a lot of relevant experience in this regard, being a captain herself. The Honorable Obo.
Asante, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, nataka kuunga mkono moja kwa moja. Manake usalama kwa ndege ni muhimu sana. Na kampuni zote za ndege na sheria ziko nyingi na wanazingatia zaidi mambo ya usalama. Mambo ya usalama kuna paka laini. Usalama unaanzia kuanza wageni wakiingizwa ndani kwa ndege, wenye kuchukua mizigo, tukikaa ndani ya ndege pia usalama unatakikana paka katika nyanja zote za kuruka. Ikiwa kutoka ukiruka ndege ikipaa angani paka kushuka, kunahitaji usalama wakati wote. Na mtu akianza kuleta shida ya usalama, captain au rubani wa ndege ana haki ya kuchukua, na amepewa jukumu, amepewa sheria, hata kama nani amebebwa hapo, yeye ndiye captain, yani ndiye rubani, anaweza kuchukua, anao haki ya kusema paka ile ndege irudishwe, hata kama nani yuko ndani aseme iende hivi, yeye ndiyo muamuzi wa mwisho. So inaleta shida huwa, na imetokea sehemu zingine mambo kama hayo yakahatarisha maisha ya watu, na pia kwingine ikaleta hasara. Manake kama ni sababu ni mtu kuwa tu mkorofi yeye mwenyewe, au sababu ni ulevi, huleta hasara. Maana ile ndege kutoka tembea chini paka ikiruka juu, pengine na isababishe kwa lugha ya kimombo waseme wafanye emergency landing au warudi kule walipotoka, huwa ni hasara kubwa. Mafuta yametumika, charges zimechajiwa za kushuka kwa ndege, yani kwa kimombo landing fees na nini, na air navigation fees, zote hizo zimechajiwa. So ni hasara nyingi, na walioko kwenye ndege wanataka utulivu na usalama. Na nikisema usalama, na waonya pia wale wengine wanaokwenda kuleta, pengine ni kutokujua au kwa kujua, ukiweko pale ukileta hatari nawe pia mwenyewe nakufikia, na unafanya wengine pia wale wahudumu wa ndege au wale marubani wanakuwa kazi nyingi zaidi. Maana kuna zile checklist kuzitumia, hasa unabidi asiangalie yale, aangalie hayo mengine. Kwa mfano, kuna wakati mwingine hapa Afrika kuna ndege iliwahi kuanguka, na sababu ilikuwa si mtu kuleta utovu wa usalama, lakini saa nyingine inaweza kuleta shida. Shida yenyewe wakati huo ilikuwa ni abiria alibeba mnyama, akiingia kwenye ndege akatoka kwa kikapu, watu wakasongea upande mmoja na ndege ikaanguka. Na saa nyingine kileta fujo, inaweza kuleta fujo paka kupigana, watu wasongee upande mmoja, utakosa ile balance ya ndege na ndege huenda ikaanguka. So ni muhimu kuwa na usalama, mtu ajue usalama ule ni wa ndege na yeye mwenyewe na mizigo. Bwana Spika, kuna mengi ya kusema, lakini mimi naunga mkono usalama uweko, lakini pia tukiongezea kwa wengine usalama, tusiangalie tu ya ndege kwa cabin, yani ndani ya ndege. Usalama ni mwingi wa ndege. Kwa mfano, serikali yetu ya Kenya au wizara husika ya transport inafaa iangalie vile equipment au vitu vinavyotumika kwa ndege waeke za kisasa. Kwa mfano Mombasa kuna instrument ambayo inaitwa VOR. Hiyo inafaa isaidie ndege katika kutembea kwake kushuka pale Mombasa. Lakini instrument hiyo inatumika zaidi wakati wa mvua. Lakini hizi zetu za Kenya saa nyingine wakati wa mvua ndio yenyewe haifanyi kazi. Sasa iko tu instrument wakati wa jua unaweza itumia. Pale unapohitaji zaidi huwezi itumia. So naomba waangalie zile instruments zinazohitajika katika airport zetu zote, pia zinachangia pakubwa katika usalama. Wazihakikishe ziwe ni instrument zinafanya kazi wakati zinapohitajika. Sisi tulizipatia jina wakati tukiruka, badala kuita Mike Oscar Victor tukiita Mike Oscar Visual, kwa sababu unaitumia peke yake wakati unaweza kutembea yani ukiona. Pale wakati huoni unahitaji hiyo instrument ndo hauipati. Na pia ningependa serikali na wizara husika iangalie mambo hizi viwanda vetu vya ndege. Viwanda vetu vya ndege inasikitisha, ukienda sehemu zingine zina mipangilio kutoka nje mpaka ndani. Na yote hayo yanachangia usalama. Manake yule abiria akiwa na hasira, pengine wamemhandle vibaya pale nje, akiingia ndani ndo ana hasira, anaongeza zile hasira zake mpaka kule kwa ndege. Sasa pale nje hizi taxi, hizi gari au madereva wanakaa pale kama sokoni. Wanavuta huyu, ukitoka hakuna tofauti na soko ya Mombasa Kongowea. Ukitoka kila mtu anakuvuta huku, mpaka wengine anakushika mkono kabisa anakuvuta huku. Mambo hayo sisi Kenya tuko mbele. Yale mambo yale, na ukienda kwa nchi, picha ya kwanza unaipata kwa kiwanda cha ndege pale airport, ndio picha unapata wale watu wako na tabia hiyo. Inatufanya sisi wageni wakiingia tunaonekana sisi hatujipangi vizuri. Nchi zingine Afrika hapa utaona ukiingia hizi taxi zinaingia kwa line. Hakuna shida kutoka ukiingia kwa gate mpaka mwisho. Huku unaanza kukasirishwa huku, ukifika huku umekasirishwa mpaka ukifika ndani umechoka. Sasa nawe hasira zako unampelekea kule kwa ndege. So kuna mambo mengi ya kuangaliwa katika ndege, na mimi kama mmoja wao ama ni pilot ni rubani, kuna standard hapa zinazosema operation procedures na watu marubani wanafuata, hata wale wahudumu kwenye ndege wanafuata, hata wale watu kwa loading wote wanafuata, ziko. So ni kuzikiwekea mkazo ili ziweze kufuatwa zaidi. Asante Bwana Speaker, thank you.
Well, the Honorable Obo, a very good contribution. In fact, the chair of Transport Committee and your committee, the issues she has raised are very salient. In fact, when one travels to JKIA and these other airports, there's a shocking confluence of taxi operators at the entry points at these airports. I don't know why Kenya Airports Authority cannot organize itself at these airports. So the point she has raised is very valid, and I think this is a matter that this committee should take up, and we must have order at those airports, because it is a terrible image that we portray to the people who are making the first contact with our country at those border points. We shall now have the Honorable Gogo Cheng, member for Rangwe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for this time that you have given me to give my own contribution on the ratification of the amendments to the protocol, Montreal Protocol, on the conventions on offenses and certain acts that are committed on board aircrafts. And aircraft service as a mode of transportation is important that we really look at it, Honorable Speaker, because other than engine failure, other than mechanical issues, if we do not have safety that can be regulated on board aircraft, then we are as good as having engine failure. There are many things I should think that we can do as a community of nations to make our aircraft safe. And one among them is improvement of the training that is given to the crew that are on board the flight. It is important that the crew are made aware that if we are managing our level of drinks on board, then it should be done up to a given level. In Kenya, we are allowed to take alcohol, but one takes alcohol at the monitor or at the expense of alcohol blow. So why not introduce systems that manage the levels of alcohol that passengers can take on flight? This would really be very important, because if training is given to the crew, then they would be able to manage the amount of alcohol that one takes. Beyond a certain level, then they refuse. Because most of unruly behavior on board is brought about by mismanagement of the drinks that are offered on board. Other than that, Honorable Speaker, there is one irritant that is very often ignored on flight, and this is the level of farting within the aircraft. There are some passengers that can literally irritate fellow passengers by passing irritable, bad smelling, and uncomfortable fart. Literally. If this is not managed well, it can cause discomfort and can cause insecurity on board. So we should have systems, especially management of food that is offered on board, and we should have basic medical systems that are able to even reduce the level of gas that one can exude when they are within the flight. If there is any one given irritant that makes people fight on board, is the fart. Farting is terrible within the planes. Even here, when you're in Kenya, and you take a flight from Kisumu to Nairobi, or Nairobi to Mombasa, Honorable Speaker, if I am only the one who has experienced this, Honorable Speaker, then I think then the rest of us are very lucky. So we should have basic provision of medicines like Eno. Yes, I'm saying this, Honorable Speaker, this should be done. And it should be a practice that should be embedded in law. Many, many times you find that there are some things that can be avoided. We have systems that make people vomit when they are on flight. And when you ask for medication, they either look for a medic, of course for reasons that are best known for them. Of course it is important that there is a medical practitioner analyze issuance of medicines before they are administered. But it is also important that we have basic medicine other than paracetamol on flight. I have experienced passengers go through agony over long hours, over long flights, long distance flights. And this causes insecurity, and this causes a lot of pain to the rest of the passengers. So we cannot be secure on board if we have any one of the other passengers who are, any of the other passengers when they have discomfort. Another thing that needs to be looked at is forced deportation. Any person who causes insecurity on board a flight, countries should actually be empowered to have this kind of passengers disembark on the next landing place. Because there are situations where people just become a problem to themselves and to the rest of the passengers. I also want to put in on record that we should have for every flight. We have very many.
The Honorable Gogo, just one minute. I'm just wondering, how do you propose the aircraft operators to control these people who are flatulent on these flights? And what kind of measures and instruments do you propose the operators to install in their aircraft so that they can control people who are flatulent and who are emitting other bodily emissions that are obviously odoriferous and offensive to you?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. This is why I was dragging in the basic training that can be part of the training that can be given to the flight crew. Part of the training that can be given to the flight crew is that when such is detected, because farting and flatulence is done progressively, and it is of serious discomfort. It causes insecurity to other members of other passengers. The empowerment I was talking about, Honorable Speaker, is that it is important that we include basic medication like bicarbonates. They are never on flight. And if they are there, they are scared to give these bicarbonates. We have bicarbonate of soda that can basically be given. And if we empower countries to allow aircraft to have some of these basic medications included, a 17-hour flight, you do breakfast, lunch, dinner, another lunch, and another breakfast, and you're seated, immobilized at one point. Honorable Speaker, it is a problem. So the basic training that is given, and another tool is that we should have paramedics. Paramedics should be included aboard all flights internationally. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, and thank you for reminding me of that, because I wanted to say that we should have paramedics included aboard flights on all international flights, or even local flights, Honorable Speaker. We have many of them trained on basic first aid, but when it comes to administration of first aid, they are limited because of probably cases of allergens and cases of not knowing medical history of the passengers. And when that's happened, they get scared and they don't help. But I'm also saying, Honorable Speaker, that that when it comes to giving out alcohol in flight, I have experienced people drink through, especially at the higher echelons aboard the plane. When you're doing economy, it's average. When it is in business, it is okay. But people doing first class are able to manage themselves. The drinking that happens aboard flight is terrible. It is worse than what we do when we are underground or when we are upground or when we are. What happens on air is bad. So we should also have a system where we are able to manage and control, and also people's medical history should be obtained before they are served certain alcohols for their own security. And with those very many remarks that I have made, I beg to support this ratification. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Kosin, I can see that you are very excited about the contributions by the Honorable Gogo, and also who has been joined by my friend from Baringo. It is now your time to reply, there being no further interest in this particular matter.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and most sincerely, because most of the cases when you're on the chair, you give me opportunity to speak. So I really thank you in a very special way, Honorable Speaker. But two, of course, he was excited about me, Honorable Speaker, because I was sorting him out, you know. He was behaving in a manner in where we come from, that is, of course, we are Pokots. So he was trying to drift our people towards a different direction, which, of course, the people don't want. And I was going to tell him, you are serving your last time in Parliament. So, and he's back now, and I told him, you are back to Parliament, and you are not going out. So he was very happy, Honorable Speaker, when I told him that is here to stay. So, Honorable Speaker, as I reply, I want to thank honorable members who made contributions, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, they made very critical contributions, which are very moving, Honorable Speaker. And I was listening and I've taken notes. I think of interest, Honorable Speaker, and the House going forward might need to rethink is this issue of health officer on board, Honorable Speaker. This is very critical. It is very important to have a health officer on board. And I wish, Honorable Speaker, that, and I don't know how it's going to be handled, that in future, when we advertise for public participation, that even honorable members who have very important input on some of these protocols, Honorable Speaker, should come to the committee. For example, if we had this valuable contribution from honorable members, Honorable Speaker, at the level of public participation, we would have captured it in the report and maybe even perhaps propose an amendment to the protocol, Honorable Speaker, going forward, or reservations on the protocol. It was going to be very helpful, Honorable Speaker. However, we will also say that it's not too late to do the right thing. And I've heard that, Honorable Speaker, from honorable members. This will be carried, and my committee will take a very serious note on this. Because, Honorable Speaker, if you look at this protocol to amend the Tokyo Convention, it is introducing a security officer, that countries are allowed to have a security officer on board so that to take care of those unruly passengers. In the same manner, we would have added that also we need a health officer, maybe at a minimum of a clinical officer on board, or whatever members think it is right, Honorable Speaker. So maybe this is my advice in future, that we take public participation very important. Even we honorable members, Honorable Speaker, you need to advise us and guide us properly. Number two, I've also noted the issue of luggages, Honorable Speaker, particularly now that we are helping and trying to reconstruct Kenya Airways afresh, Honorable Speaker. I've taken that on board. And also those unruly taxi drivers and taxi operators. That we also, Honorable Speaker, we have taken on board as a committee. And with those maybe few remarks, I have also taken other notes, Honorable Speaker. So even if I didn't reply, some of those few items I have taken on board, and this committee is is listening to the contribution of honorable members. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply.
Very well. Honorable members, for good reasons, I will direct that the necessary steps after this be undertaken when the matter will be set down for consideration again. I further direct that we move on to the next order of business.
Order number 12, motion, approval of ratification of bilateral air services agreements between Kenya and the Hellenic Republic, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Seychelles, and Finland.
Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Transport, the Honorable Kosin.
Again, Honorable Speaker, I thank you for giving me this great opportunity to move this motion, very, very important motion, Honorable Speaker. And I'm saying, Honorable Speaker, that is important because it has come at the right time, when, of course, we are trying to, as I said earlier, to reconstruct Kenya Airways, to fly higher. Honorable Speaker, then I beg to move the ratification of the bilateral air service agreement between Kenya and the Hellenic Republic, Kenya and Burkina Faso, Kenya and Cambodia, Kenya and Seychelles, and Kenya, Honorable Speaker, and Finland. Honorable Speaker, as you might, members have seen in our report, Honorable Speaker, in brief, what is happening in these protocols or these agreements? These are negotiations, Honorable Speaker. These are permissions that Kenya is seeking to have its flights or planes fly to those countries which I've mentioned, Honorable Speaker. So it's a negotiation. And if you look at the way I've mentioned, there are 5, Honorable Speaker, and it is in our report, and members have seen this. There are 5 of them, Honorable Speaker. So if you look at these individual protocols, it is targeting a request. It is a request in simple terms. It is, for example, if it is this one between Kenya and Burkina Faso, we are asking that we need our planes to land in Burkina Faso. And Burkina Faso, or Burkinabe, in other language, they are also asking that their planes land in our country. That is exactly what the meaning of these protocols. And I'm trying to emphasize that, Honorable Speaker, so that Kenyans and we, as a House, can differentiate between the amendment, which we have just discussed earlier, and this one. This is really purely, there was nothing in between. There was no agreement between us. There was no flights between these countries, which I've mentioned, 5 countries, Honorable Speaker. Of course, Kenyans have been going to Burkina Faso, but they might have been passing through other countries. Our plane, for example, then goes to land in Lagos, because we have a bilateral agreement to land in Lagos, and then they can now travel to Burkina Faso, Honorable Speaker. But now we are asking, or they're asking, that then we have these direct flights to these countries. And they are also asking that they have direct flights from their countries to our countries. It's something good, Honorable Speaker. So maybe in summary, Honorable Speaker, that is what all of these 5 instruments are asking. And in a few then minutes, Honorable Speaker, if you allow me, then I'll go to detailed in every of these protocols out of these 5 countries. And then I'll ask my colleague later to second me. Honorable Speaker, let me explain a little bit. This one, or this protocol between Kenya and Cambodia, bilateral air service agreement. Of course, people know where Cambodia is, Honorable Speaker. And what we are saying, and as a committee, after, of course, receiving from the executive and particularly a cabinet, Honorable Speaker, we are saying that, or it means that this bilateral air service agreement between Kenya and the Kingdom of Cambodia was negotiated, concluded, and initiated on 9th and 10th September 2014, Honorable Speaker, in a place called Phnom in Kingdom of Cambodia. It was further operationalized by the signing of a memorandum of understanding on 10 September 2014. So it is come to this House fairly quickly, Honorable Speaker. Of course, one of the reasons members will be asking, why has it taken so long, 2014 until now, 2019, that we are discussing? Honorable Speaker, it is important to note that it is not easy to negotiate. You know, when a country is writing and asking us as a country, of course, Kenyans know, and we know, that it lands not in Parliament, it lands in executive. That is the Ministry of Transport. So it takes a lot of time. The requests, you know, the language, the text, the writing, it's actually a legal instrument. And after we approve it, it becomes like an act of Parliament in accordance with the Constitution, Honorable Speaker. So it takes a bit of some time to negotiate, you know, give us this, give and take. And Kenya, and of course, honorable members will have seen in the report which I tabled, Honorable Speaker. So further, in this agreement, it provides for a multiple designation of airlines, limits the number of frequencies to 7, no restriction on aircraft capacity, and an open and liberal route schedule, Honorable Speaker. The exercise of the 5th freedom traffic rights for destination airlines to be exchanged on reciprocal basis, subject to approval by aeronautical authorities of respective parties, Honorable Speaker. Frequencies, Honorable Speaker, is the number of landing. And therefore, in this one, particularly this one, between us and Cambodia, it is limiting to 7. Meaning, of course, they can land 7 times in a day. That's what it means by these frequencies. Of course, people outside there might not understand what's the meaning of frequency. That's what I'm trying to emphasize, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in this agreement between us and Cambodia, we are saying as a committee, Honorable Speaker, that currently no Kenya airline operates scheduled air services to and from Cambodia. That's the truth, Honorable Speaker. And similarly, there is no airline from Cambodia operating scheduled air services between the 2 states. The Cambodia authorities requested through diplomatic channels for initiation of this agreement between the 2 states to be formally signed during the ICANN 2018 held on between 10th and 14 December 2018 in Nairobi, Honorable Speaker. And consequently, the agreement was formally signed on 10 December 2018, and that is why now they are seeking for this to be ratified by the House and approved by the House so that it becomes law. That is what it means in summary, Honorable Speaker, when I pick the most crucial items that we need to understand as a House from our committee, asking the House to approve. That is between ourselves and Cambodia. And if the House approves, then you'll find scheduled flights to Cambodia. It will be good, Honorable Speaker, to note that Kenya Airways at the moment, they're having about like 53 destinations or networks. And therefore, if the House approves this, then they have a chance to increase that from 53 plus 5, it will be 58. So it's some good news, to be honest, Honorable Speaker, to the Kenya aviation industry. So what is this one between the Kenya and Burkina Faso? And this is a very important agreement, Honorable Speaker, of course, very strategic country in West Africa. Honorable Speaker, in this one, we are saying as a committee that the bilateral air service agreement between Kenya and Burkina Faso was negotiated and initiated on 20th August 2008 in Burkina Faso, and it was operationalized by signing of a memorandum of understanding, Honorable Speaker. 2008 is a bit of some time, and therefore the negotiations took a bit of some time. However, the agreement provides for multiple designations of airlines and limited number of frequencies. This is very good, Honorable Speaker, for us as a country. No restrictions on aircraft capacity, and an open and liberal routes and liberal route schedule. Honorable Speaker, we are also saying further that with regard to the exercise of the fifth freedom traffic rights, designated airlines can operate 2 frequencies with full fifth freedom traffic rights on any 4 intermediate points and 2 beyond those points. This is a very good, Honorable Speaker, condition in this agreement between ourselves and Burkina Faso. And we are saying, Honorable Speaker, we have also confirmed that currently no Kenyan carrier operates scheduled air service to and from Burkina Faso. Similarly, Honorable Speaker, there is no airline from Burkina Faso operating scheduled air services between the 2 states. However, the Burkina Faso authorities requested through diplomatic channels for the agreement between the 2 states to be formally signed during the ICANN 2018, held on 10 to 14, 2018 in Nairobi, Honorable Speaker. That is the scenario. We don't have any flight, and those are the conditions upon which this agreement is trying to detail between us. It's a very good one, that we can have numerous frequencies between the 2 countries and fly between the 2 countries. So and we are hoping, we are doing this, Honorable Speaker, the Kenya Airways, the new Kenya Airways now are listening. Of course, I will say something later, Honorable Speaker. So number 3 agreement that we have before you, Honorable Speaker, and before the House is between Kenya and Finland, bilateral air service agreement. This is very important. Finland is a very important destination in Europe for our country and our people, Honorable Speaker, between both countries. So what is my committee saying in this one? Honorable Speaker, we are saying that the bilateral, what we saw in this one is that the bilateral air service agreement between Kenya and Finland was negotiated and initiated during the 2017. 5th December 2017 in Colombo, Sri Lanka, Honorable Speaker. And it was signed on 14 December 2018. That, a bit of some time, of course, for negotiations. Honorable Speaker, further, my committee is saying that the agreement provides for multiple designation of airlines, 14 frequencies per week, Honorable Speaker, no restriction on aircraft capacity, and an open and liberal routes schedule. Exercise of the 5th freedom traffic rights is subject to approval by the respective aeronautical authorities. Here, Honorable Speaker, what we mean by aeronautical authority is like KCAA. KCAA is the regulator in terms of flight in and out of this country. And therefore, of course, it is giving it power to say there might be other things that we might approve, but giving authority. This bilateral agreement is recognizing the authority of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, for example, Honorable Speaker, in this country. And we are saying in this agreement that currently no Kenyan carrier operates scheduled air services to and from Republic of Finland, and similarly, there is no airline from Finland operating scheduled in our country. Maybe perhaps after the ratification and approval by this House, Honorable Speaker, then we can have those flights then coming to our country. Honorable Speaker, country number 4, and agreement number 4, Honorable Speaker, is the one between Kenya and the Hellenic Republic bilateral air service agreement. Hellenic Republic, Honorable Speaker, maybe many people might not understand. In simple terms, it is Greece. This is, of course, Greece. And Greece is very important, Honorable Speaker, in terms of travel, between ourselves and Greece. Of course, tourism, Honorable Speaker. So my committee, in requesting the House to agree with us and approve this bilateral air agreement, Honorable Speaker, we are saying that the Kenya Hellenic Republic, the Kenya and the Hellenic Republic of Bilateral Air Service Agreement, Honorable Speaker, was negotiated in 1978. It's really some time back. It was reviewed and initiated on 5th December 2016 in Nassau, the Bahamas, and finally signed in 2018 on 4th December. The agreement, Honorable Speaker, provides for multiple designation of airlines. In fact, we are given, Honorable Speaker, 7 frequencies for passenger service, no restriction on air capacity of aircraft, no restriction on all cargo operations, and an open and liberal route schedule, Honorable Speaker. Of course, this is very important because then they can fly anywhere in the part of that country. We can also decide and they can fly to Mombasa. Honorable Speaker, exercise of the 5th freedom traffic rights shall be subject to approval by the respective aeronautical authorities. Respective, of course, means our KCA here and an equivalent KCA in those in Greece, Honorable Speaker. Further, my committee notes that currently no carrier from either party operates scheduled air flights in those routes, Honorable Speaker, now. And therefore, asking for this is really critical so that then we can be able to open these routes. Finally, the 5th country, Honorable Speaker, that we have an air agreement that we're presenting to the House for approval is between ourselves as a country and Seychelles, Honorable Speaker. This air service agreement, Honorable Speaker, what we note as a committee, and we're asking the House to agree with us, that, Honorable Speaker, the Kenya and Seychelles bilateral air service agreement was negotiated and initiated on 13th December 2013 in Durban, South Africa. It was signed on 14 December 2018. That took a bit of some time in terms of negotiations. And of course, you know, Honorable Speaker, Seychelles is a very critical country in terms of tourism for ourselves. And it is near, it is not really far. Honorable Speaker, further, the agreement provides for unlimited frequencies and capacity, multiple designation, and liberal route schedule, Honorable Speaker. Exercising 5th freedom traffic rights is on reciprocal basis. So if they give us, we give them. If they give us, we give them. That is what it means, by, Honorable Speaker, by reciprocal. Kenya Airways is operating daily to Seychelles at the moment, Honorable Speaker, from that agreement. And therefore, signing of this is really, really critical, Honorable Speaker. And that's what we mean, Honorable Speaker, in these 5 agreements that we're asking. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the timing, there's no better time than now. This committee, Honorable Speaker, with the help of the House, approved a report to restructure Kenya Airways and nationalize the Kenya Airways. Of course, Honorable Speaker, we had 2 options. And it is good that I am saying this, Honorable Speaker. And I'm hoping that 2 parties are listening and watching us, which is the management of Kenya Airways and the pilots, Honorable Speaker. Because although I've not received any official message, but there is some talk which is not really very good between the pilots and the management. And Honorable Speaker, we would wish that they will not undermine the direction given by this House, Honorable Speaker, that we want to restructure Kenya Airways. You know? And we are hoping that, Honorable Speaker, not the pilots or anybody will hold this country or our airliner at ransom. Why am I saying that, Honorable Speaker? Because my committee was faced with 2 options in trying to restructure. You know what happened in the House, Honorable Speaker, when that PIP was introduced on the floor of the House? It was very emotional. It was very emotive, Honorable Speaker. And through your able guidance, you gave us guidance to say this Committee of Transport should relook at that and bring a report to the House. Honorable Speaker, following your directives, my committee did not sleep, Honorable Speaker, for 6 months. And we looked and we saw Kenya Airways is finished. To be very honest, Honorable Speaker, it is just working on mercy. Actually, we can say if it was somebody, a human being, we would have said it is actually working on or breathing on a machine, Honorable Speaker. ICU, we would say, Honorable Speaker. And my committee was faced by 2 options, among other very many options, which we were saying, how would we then help our Kenya airline? We were faced by 2 options. One of the options was to present to this House an insolvent report or a report to bankrupt Kenya Airways, Honorable Speaker. And we move forward. So in fact, some of my colleagues, my members of my committee, and it's very important that they're listening to this, Honorable Speaker. And they're saying, why are we rescuing Kenya Airways? Let's kill it. Let's just dissolve it. Others, Honorable Speaker, said, no, let us not dissolve our airline. This is our pride. This is our country. This is our flag, Honorable Speaker. And of course now, we chose not to kill the child, but to resuscitate or help the child again breathe once more, Honorable Speaker. And that is why we went this direction. And we brought the House, and the House agreed with us. I'm saying that, Honorable Speaker, because that is falling in line with expansion, which is asking these countries to agree with us so that we can fly to those countries. But having some boardroom games, boardroom debates that want to injure the process which we are taking, Honorable Speaker, I will say that, Honorable Speaker, we will look at that again as a committee. And we might bring a very radical proposal, Honorable Speaker. I'm saying that if there is a CBA that is against expansion and making our country move to the next level, then that CBA needs to be renegotiated. And needs sober minds between the management and the pilots, Honorable Speaker. But any party should not hold this country at ransom. That one we will say, Honorable Speaker, without fear of contradiction. And if they cannot sort out their problems, then we will legislate and solve for them on behalf of the people of Kenya. So the yellow card is outside there, and they should read this, Honorable Speaker. Without fear of contradiction, nobody should hold our country and ransom. Look, Honorable Speaker, we are asking other countries. If the House agrees with us today, Honorable Speaker, and if it approves, it means that we can fly to these countries. We are asking 5 countries. So if some people playing some games, some individuals, Honorable Speaker, are playing some games that we will not achieve as a country to make our pride go to these countries. So what does that mean, Honorable Speaker? It means that some few people, individuals, are blocking this country from moving forward. And that will not allow, Honorable Speaker. And that is why then, if that is the case, then this committee will revisit that matter again, Honorable Speaker, and also bring to the House our proposal in terms of how to address this. But we will say this, Honorable Speaker, without fear of contradiction, that on behalf of the people of Kenya, we cannot allow some few individuals having boardroom games, maybe superiority complex, to kill the spirit of expanding Kenya.
The Honorable Kosing, you have actually run your time, but I will allow you an extra minute or two to move.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for that guidance. But I think I have prosecuted all the matters that I needed to have said, Honorable Speaker. But let me repeat again that no individual should hold our country at ransom on their own superiority complex or lack of superiority complex, Honorable Speaker. I want to encourage that there should be some dialogue so that these issues of boredom can be finished, so that we can be able to proceed in a good manner. And with those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask my colleague, Honorable Shadrach Mose, Senior Counsel, Honorable Shadrach Mose, to second, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
The Honorable Mose, you may wish to move to the front. The Honorable Mose, we are having a technical problem with the gadgets today.
Oh, sorry, yes.
That one seems to be alive. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance to, right from the outset, second this very critical motion. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that the bilateral air services agreements as between these 5 countries is very critical to our country. You would not, Honorable Speaker, that Chairman has been very, very elaborate in articulating the various issues that are contained in this motion. And I wouldn't want to belabor, but to say 1 or 2 things, that once these agreements are ratified, they would become part of our Kenyan laws as envisaged and all provided for in Article 2(6) of our Constitution. And therefore, in that light, it is extremely clear that once we ratify these agreements, Honorable Speaker, we would have at least direct flights by some of our carriers like Kenya Airways from here to the various destinations like Cambodia, to Burkina Faso, Republic of Finland, and the Hellenic Republic of Greece. Mr. Speaker, there are multiple advantages or benefits that we would derive as a country in ensuring that we have articulated this. One, there would be obviously new horizons, new routes for our carriers like Kenya Airways that we would be able to expand our networks. And by way of expansion, there are several benefits, Honorable Speaker, that we would be able to get. First and foremost, it is definitely would expand the horizons of investment. I know very many countries from over the world are looking at Kenya as a serious investment destination. In fact, as a serious investment hub in Africa. And therefore, when we pass this legislation or these agreements, it obviously means that we would have opened the doors for that direct interaction with these countries. Secondly, expansion would also lead to issues like employment. In fact, we would definitely or obviously benefit from an increased level of business interaction, and which therefore would add advantage to employment of our youth. Kenya, you would realize, Mr. Speaker, we really have several or thousands of our youths who have graduated from various universities, technical institutions, colleges, that is tertiary colleges, are unemployed. So if we pass these bilateral agreements between us and these countries, automatically, Mr. Speaker, would have also improved in that, or would also have opened the doors in that direction. And this would definitely also lead to economic growth. Kenya as a country, I am sure the moment we open our doors, as I've said, Mr. Speaker, really then would mean that even our economic growth would be on the upside or would be able to improve. Mr. Speaker, Chairman has elaborated that as a committee, we deliberated on these bilateral agreements. We discussed, we looked at all the options. We also received good material or information from the ministry, which helped us to come to this conclusion. So in a nutshell, Honorable Speaker, I want to support, or I want to second this motion and urge that my honorable colleagues would find it extremely necessary, expedient, and move with alacrity to ensure that we pass these bilateral agreements to enable us as a country to start take advantage of our interaction between us and these countries, and also to ensure that we continue to expand our international network. Just to mention, Mr. Speaker, that the other day we had our carrier Kenya Airways opening its direct flight to the USA. We also had it opening its direct flight to Geneva. And therefore, on this expansion network, I am sure with an addition of these other countries and many more would have put Kenya in a good international interaction, so that at the end of the day, we would benefit as a country and our economy will be on an upward trend. With those remarks, I want to second, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable members, allow me to propose a question that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing on its consideration of the bilateral air services agreements between Kenya and the Hellenic Republic, Kenya and Burkina Faso, Kenya and Cambodia, Kenya and Seychelles, Kenya and Finland, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, June the 6th, 2019, and pursuant to Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the ratification of the bilateral air services agreements between Kenya and the Hellenic Republic, Kenya and Burkina Faso, Kenya and Cambodia, Kenya and Seychelles, and Kenya and Finland. The Honorable Nyekal, member for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute. Mr. Speaker, all airlines run as a business, whether private or with state involvement, needs many destinations, many countries where they can have routes, where they can take passengers, pick passengers, and therefore there must be agreements between those countries. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, these agreements that we are seeking to have with the countries here mentioned, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Seychelles, Finland, are necessary for this country, particularly Kenya Airways. Because as we know now, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways is not doing well. We have had many discussions in this House so that to find ways of how we can improve the performance of Kenya Airways. I think this is one of the ways in which we can actually improve its performance by getting into agreement with several countries so that we have many routes, providing, of course, Mr. Speaker, that we have the capacity to do so. Obviously, if we want to get into destination, into those countries, and get our airlines getting there, we must reciprocate. Therefore, the need for bilateral agreements is obvious. And really, that is something that perhaps I should say we should have done a long time ago. As the mover was saying, we should not ask why it has taken so long. International agreements take a lot of time, detailed discussions before you get there. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at the outline of these agreements, actually all the 5 of them, they have certain things in common. They have the grant of rights so that the parties can grant the rights for their planes or their airlines to operate from one side to the other. They give the rights for designation and authorization of one or more airlines. If Kenya had one or more airlines, we would not just say Kenya Airways. And again, I think this may actually work for the private airlines that are big enough to take these international travels. So it is something that we should look at in a bigger way. Mr. Speaker, when you traverse nations, you will need the application of laws in various countries. Again, these agreements provide for how the laws in the various countries we have agreements with will be applied, so that each of the partners are actually protected. We are aware that in various countries there are different rules for taxation, on customs, on duties. Again, these agreements looks at how are we going to give each other flexibilities on the applications of these taxes, whether they pay duties, whether there are exemptions, particularly for equipment that have to be brought in, staff that have to come in, institutions that have to be established like offices. Again, those are important. And then the user charges, how are we going to charge each other for using our services at the airports, in their airports. And again, tariff and pricing, and also safety. The civil aviation safeties, again, must apply across, just like what we had discussed a little earlier. Although these are done with various conventions, we were talking of the Montreal Convention in the last motion, but here I think we are aligning it a lot to the Chicago Conventions. So again, it's not something that we are doing for the first time. We also know that we are going to have different currencies, and when you are doing business with people, you will want to know how do we transmit the currencies, how do we get, what are the exchange rates, what we do, and what are the regulations. Like for now in Kenya, you know, if you have to bank more than 1 million shillings, then issues have to come if you want to transfer it. Now, when we get into these countries where these laws do not apply, what do you do? So these are the things that will be looked at it. We definitely must look at ways that schedules of flight will be approved, ways in which we will consult with each other, ways in which we shall settle disputes. Those are all important. And then even when we need to terminate our agreements, how do we do it? All these are actually put and are part of this agreement. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is something we must support, and we are sure that this, when we have a lot of these airlines coming, it will also bring business. We'll provide the ground services, the catering services, the transport services. All these will actually come with this. So it is something that we need to actually get involved in. Mr. Speaker, having said that, and we'll support this, I think it is time to look at ourselves as we are getting into agreements with other countries. How is our airline, the national airline, how is it performing? How is it conducting itself? How is it every year we have to discuss Kenya Ways in this parliament in relation to problems of performance, problems of funding, and problems, labor issues. Almost every year you have labor issues. The mover was talking of CBAs that are agreements. How do you get into bargaining agreements and then you don't really honor them? You can't say that we got into this CBA and now this CBA is harmful. How can it be harmful when you actually discussed it and got it? Unless at the time of discussing the agreements, people are not sincere. And anything that done the basis of insincerity will fail. So as much as we can call upon the staff, the pilots, and so on, but the management must be sincere at every point so that what is agreed on is honored. That is really how you maintain a labor relationship. Mr. Speaker, we also know that we have problems of transparency in the management of of our airline. The honesty in investment. Not long ago we were discussing who are the owners, the banks that are involved. And we are very uneasy because sometimes there were clear conflict of interest in the management of investment. The moment you have a conflict of interest in the management, particularly in huge investments like the Kenya Airways, it will definitely fail. We have experience of businesses, the business decisions that do not serve the airline itself. We were talking of leasing of planes. Obviously, these are things that experts must look at so that you look at them in a way, are we overreaching ourselves? Are we ambitious? Is it for political reasons or for business reasons that do not actually benefit the airline? We know we have had problems of even leasing ground transport, even just the ground transport. So this, as we are going internationally to seek markets, we must make ourselves ready, our airline, to operate in clear and transparent circumstances. Remember, Mr. Speaker, not just before the recess, we had a very heated debate where Kenya Airways was making a proposal to take over the management of airport. And as I said then, I'm saying now, how can an organization that is having difficulty and having losses seek to take over the management of an organization that is doing well? It didn't look right. eventually we came to a decision that we make an entity that involves the Kenya Airways, the Kenya Airways, Kenya Airports Authority, and so on. But even then, we were not clear on how the debts will be handled. And as we go along, we will be very keen to see how that is implemented so that the taxpayers are protected from paying for debts of investors that did not invest wisely. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Very valid contribution, the Honorable Nikal. The mover, while he was moving, and I can see he's breaching the rules. The chair, I think he was sending out some warning to some pilots, I think, who have a CBA with Kenya Airways. I do not think that was very right, because those are agreements, and if you, as the Honorable Nikal has submitted, if you enter into agreements, you better be prepared to abide by the provisions of those agreements. We shall have a contribution by the Honorable Ibrahim Sahal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, airline service agreement are proposed to aid the liberalization of the international aviation market, which is generally desirable, bringing the benefits of the aviation industry to the customers and to a wider economy. Mr. Speaker, conventionally airline services agreements are mindful of issues around international relations, sovereignty, infrastructure capacity, fairness, labor interest. The rectification of this bilateral air service agreement will, among others, increase routes and capacity of our national carriers to new destinations like Greece, Finland, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, to increase route competition and resultant fair pricing, increase the wider economy. There will be increased economic activities in the aviation sector generated by servicing, maintenance, and management of the additional air service, with a multiple effect of general economy, promote tourism sector, increase trade and business activities. I stand to support. Thank you.
The Honorable Arbel. But do you have your card, the Honorable Arbel? It's come to the front. Yeah, you were to inform me that it's not working. Come to the front. Yes, use that one, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. The motion on the ratification of bilateral air services agreement between Kenya and the Hellenic Republic. That includes Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Seychelles, Finland, as articulated by the chairperson of the Departmental Committee of Transport, Public Works. Mr. Speaker, airline business has really become very competitive, that for one to remain relevant, you must start to think of bringing down your fares, opening up new routes, like this motion is trying to suggest, so that you remain relevant in business. Mr. Speaker, introducing direct flight to such kind of countries definitely is a good move, because it will be able to create employment opportunities to our Kenyan population, the youth who are actually out there and looking for employment, while employment has really become very scarce. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways is one airline which is carrying the brand of Kenya flag, and it is actually flying high, that the wordings, the way the wordings are going, that it is the pride of Kenya. Truly, every Kenyan is proud to see Kenya Airways flying all over the world. And therefore, opening up for Kenya Airways for these new routes, definitely it will promote Kenya as a country and Kenyans as individuals. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are very hardworking people. And Kenyans are very good in hospitality industry. Mr. Speaker, I normally watch a program called Daring Abroad. And I could see Kenyans who are daring abroad, who are venturing in different businesses. And they are trying their level best to promote their businesses, and therefore also Kenyans, the Kenya as a country is also being promoted that way. Mr. Speaker, within East Africa, I have worked also sometimes in Rwanda. You can imagine when Rwanda Airline was introduced to have their first direct flight to Kenya, you can imagine some women in Kenya have been demonstrating in the streets on the grounds that their men, they were envy of those ladies in Rwanda, because it is said that the beautiful ones are not yet born in Kenya. That is a saying in Nairobi. But if you go to Rwanda, Mr. Speaker, well, I have actually been roaming the streets of Rwanda. I could say, yes, that can be true, that the beautiful ones are born in Rwanda. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, ladies in Kenya have been demonstrating.
The Honorable Abele, just for my own clarity,
yes.
You are saying that Kenya is behind Rwanda in terms of the beautiful ones being born.
Oh, that is definitely, Mr. Speaker.
That in
You need
Rwanda
to pay a visit.
they have arrived. In Kenya, we are still waiting.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
All right.
Already in Rwanda, the beautiful ones are already born, while in Kenya, they are not yet born. Of course, if you have eyes, unless you normally just board your vehicle going home and coming back, if you go to Nairobi town, you can really be able to see, comparing Rwandese and the Kenyans.
The Honorable Arbele, the Speaker, is blind to all this. He can only receive this information from you. And this, I believe, is your take on this. And I will choose to let it ride at that.
So, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to emphasize on that, on the basis that opening up new routes to Burkina Faso, to Seychelles, just like we have opened new routes to Rwanda and the surrounding countries, we will be able to, our Kenyan people who are so much daring, will be able to venture into those countries and even be able to marry ladies from those countries and bring them to Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I have seen even some people who are heading foreign missions here, even like the late Bob Colimo. They have all come to Kenya with the intention to come and do business in Kenya or work for an organization, but having fallen in love with the country and the people, they end up staying here, they end up marrying here, and they end up being buried also here. So that really gives Kenya a notch higher than any other country. Therefore, I would really urge Kenya Airways to fly high to those very other countries, the countries which have been mentioned here, Burkina Faso, Seychelles, Cambodia, and we also need to bring the whole world. The Kenya Airways need to carry the whole, all the countries in the world to bring them to Kenya. Although the population will definitely be able to swell, and such that we don't want a situation like what is happening in South Africa, the xenophobia, where the Africans are fighting their fellow Africans. It is something absurd that needs to be condemned with the strongest terms possible. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I really would like to congratulate the chair of Transport Public Committee for their noble initiative to open up these routes. Because, Mr. Speaker, the other day, unfortunately, we are hearing Kenya Airways, they are recording losses and losses. Yet, these small aircrafts are just running around Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan. They are reporting profits. It is something similar like sometimes back when Nakumatt, which is a chain of supermarkets, were opening one branch after another. Yet, the Uchumi supermarket has been closing one branch after another. We were wondering what matrix is Nakumatt applying into opening new supermarkets, new branches, while Uchumi supermarket is closing one after another. It is that kind of a scenario. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, I really would like to congratulate even our president, Uhuru Kenyatta, because he is the one who is behind even development. In the olden days, we used to see traffic jam everywhere in Nairobi. But at least today, we can see bypasses, and still they are being constructed. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways, unless I don't know, some people are pulling down Kenya Airways from flying higher, the committee needs to look deeper into what is really affecting Kenya Airways so that they can be able to register profits than just telling us here it is about the management of the airport. I don't know. It is the pilots who are creating problems. And Mr. Speaker, just to add the last one, Mr. Speaker, our pilots also need to be, creative to inform those people who have paid for the fares, who are in the aircraft and flying to different destinations, that you can imagine sometimes, Mr. Speaker, when you are seated inside an aircraft, and then the aircraft is going through some turbulence, you can even hardly say a word to the person who's seated next to you, because you don't know what is going to happen next. But at least the pilots need to communicate to give those passengers some confidence that we are now flying over Mount Kilimanjaro. On your left is Mount Kilimanjaro, and then everybody all of a sudden will gain some confidence, and he will tilt his head to the right or to the left, trying to see Mount Kilimanjaro. With those few remarks, I support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The member for Laisame said, I did not know that you are so humorous, but thank you for humoring us today. Very good contribution. The Honorable Obo, member for Lamu.
Asante, Bwana Spika. Nimejaribu kutafuta nafasi kuweka pointi ya nidhamu au kwa kuzungumza, hata kama ametuchekesha, lakini namuomba atembelee Lamu, especially Shela, Pate Island, ujionee warembo. Kisha useme kwamba Lamu twaje Kenya hawajazaliwa. Kenya wamezaliwa hapa, hata sisi ukituangalia hapa si haba. Wakati wetu tungekuwa hapo kwa cabin crew. Nafikiri ungefurahia hiyo service hapo kwa cabin. Kwa hivyo Kenya wasichana wetu ni warembo. Usiseme hakuna nchi hapa East Africa inatuweza kwa urembo.
The Honorable Mheshimiwa Obo, nakubaliana nawe.
Asante.
Endelea.
Okay, Bwana Spika, tumechangia sana, lakini ningependa kuchukua nafasi pia kupongeza Civil Aviation Authority. Hata nikitoka nje hapo nimepiga simu kwa wale marubani ambao wako kuuliza pengine kuna shida zaidi, kwa sababu mimi kama miaka miwili sijarusha ndege. Wamesema sahihi Kenya Civil Aviation Authority wanafanya kazi nzuri, wamefunga ukanda. Zaidi ni kwamba kutoka tupate ile route ya kwenda Amerika, wamejaribu zaidi, sehemu nyingi wamefunga mashimo, na hiyo ni kazi nzuri na wapongeza sana Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. Bwana Spika, tukizungumzia mambo ya ndege na viwanda itakuwa si vyema watu wa Lamu wananiangalia mimi nazungumzia mambo ya viwanda na sitaka mambo ya kwenda mpaka nje international, lakini Lamu County kiwanja cha ndege ni kimoja. Nyuma kilikuwa ni unaweza ingia kutoka nchi za nje na ukaingia Lamu na ukatoka. Sahihi hauwezi kwa mambo ya usalama. Tunaomba hii committee wazingatie jambo hilo. Viwanja ikiwa wakati wa nyuma kwa lugha ya sawa nikifanya chairman aelewe lugha ya Kimombo ni entry and exit point. Lamu ilikuwa, sasa hii hatuna. Na sasa tumeenda mambo ya county, inafaa sote county zote 47 ziwe na viwanja vya ndege vya international airport. Nikiongea hivyo kuna bado areas za Lamu East, Lamu kuna visiwa, na katika nchi zingine utaona kila kisiwa kina kiwanja cha ndege. Ni masikitiko kwamba Lamu tuna visiwa 11 na katika visiwa hivyo havina viwanja vya ndege. Na wakati wa nyuma kisiwa kama Pate Island, kisiwa cha Pate, kisiwa cha Ndau, kisiwa cha Kiwaiu, zote zilikuwa na viwanja vya ndege. Sasa hii zote havina viwanja vya ndege. Bwana Spika, sasa hii ukitokea mgonjwa yani usiku na bahari ni chafu, au ikitekana mgonjwa kuletwa Nairobi kuchukuliwa na ndege kule, naona sehemu zingine paka Masai Mara wanaenda kuweka mataa ndege ishuke ili iweze kumtoa mgonjwa ambaye atakana kuwa airlifted, mfano kuletwa Nairobi. Lamu haiwezekani hata tukataka, paka apitie bahari chafu na shida nyingi. Naomba komiti hii izingatie mambo hayo, ni kama ni sheria hata kiubinadamu. Haiwezekani kuwa na kisiwa kina watu zaidi 18,000 kisiwa kimoja na kiwe hakina airstrip, yani kiwanja hata kama kidogo kile ndege ndogo zinaweza kwenda kutoa mtu wakati wa emergency. Hata upande wa security wa usalama, tunajua area za Lamu vile iko. Itawasaidia sana wakiwa na hivi viwanja sehemu za zile visiwa na hata kwa mainland, zinaweza wasaidia pia kufikia kwa haraka. Mfano kama mtu amechukuliwa au imetokea dharura yoyote ya usalama, wataruka kwa haraka na wafike na kivamie vizuri, na pengine walikemee vikali jambo hilo au walitetee, au mtu asichukuliwe, ambao itatusaidia sana hata kwa mambo ya siku nyingine wakitaka tena kujaribu hawataweza, kwa sababu wajua sisi tuko mbele. So naomba sana chairman, namuona hapa yuko, jambo hili aliwekee mkazo. Kisiwa chochote hata kama ni huku upande wa Kisumu vina visiwa, zinafaa kila kisiwa kiwe na airport kimoja, hata angalau kimoja. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Seeing no further interest in this, I therefore call upon the chair to reply. The Honorable Kemosi, you are interested? Your card doesn't seem to be working, but I'll give you an opportunity before I give the chair the opportunity to reply. Use the mic in front of you, the one next, on the next level.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also wish to raise and support the motion in respect to the agreement of air services to the countries of Hellenic Republic, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Finland, and Seychelles. Mr. Speaker, as you realize, in Kenya we do not have direct air services linking Kenya directly to these countries. Mr. Speaker, this one has definitely hampered the movement of people between these countries. It has also been difficult to exploit the potential in these countries in terms of exploiting the market, also in terms of trying to access the jobs which could be available in these countries, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways is a national carrier which has been in operation for so many years. Although it's facing some challenges, but we as Kenyans do pride ourselves with Kenya Airways, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the area 2000 and even before, Kenya Airways had several routes. It was flying in several routes in the world. But when it started having problems, they narrowed down their air services, Mr. Speaker. This has also caused a very big problem in terms of movement, Mr. Speaker. accessing most of the countries or most of the routes in Africa, it has become a very difficult, venture. In that somebody could want to travel, and in some countries which, instead of going through other destinations, somebody can fly directly to those countries. An example, Mr. Speaker, being the nearest route here in Botswana. Mr. Speaker, it will only take somebody 3 hours to fly directly from Kenya to Botswana and get back to Kenya in 3 hours' time. But since the year 2016, when Kenya Airways terminated the route of Botswana, somebody has to go through South Africa and then come back to Botswana, which takes about 5 hours as against, Mr. Speaker, taking about 3 hours and back. Another route, Mr. Speaker, is accessing countries like Turkey, which is a main partner with Kenya in terms of business. Mr. Speaker, if you have to go through Amsterdam or other routes, you will take about 8 or so hours to get to those destinations like Turkey. But if you are to fly direct from here to Turkey, it will hardly take you 5 hours to reach Turkey. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is very important because if we adopt, and I'm very sure we are going to adopt this report, opening these routes will definitely signify the attractiveness of Kenya for business in terms of tourism, and it will also promote trade, and by so doing will grow economically. Mr. Speaker, the agreement will also further enhance connectivity, enhance international trade and the jobs, as well as accelerate the economic development of this country, which is very important, Mr. Speaker. The agreement will definitely expand the route network, and we will be able to directly fly to those countries. However, Mr. Speaker, my only reservation is one: will really Kenya Airways be able to exploit, or will it really fly successfully to these routes? That one needs actually to be interrogated by Kenya Airways itself. Where I'm saying so, Mr. Speaker, actually last week itself, we were able to learn that Kenya Airways has cancelled more than 58 trips so far, which has, made the airline serve quite a big loss. So still, we are hopeful that since this agreement has been signed, the Kenya Airways itself can be able to pull the resources together. They can also be able, to mobilize every aircraft which is available so that they can be able to fly to these routes, Mr. Speaker. Above all, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion as a member of the Transport Committee, because it will go a long way in promoting the economy of this country. It will also definitely create jobs for the youth who are seeking for jobs. For those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion.
Honorable members, we have a problem with the system. I see the member for Limuru. I don't know whether he's interested in speaking to this, but he's very comfortable where he's seated. I'll therefore allow the chair to reply. The member for Limuru, you are within your rights. You are properly within the House.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for again giving me this chance to reply. And as I do, Honorable Speaker, I want to take the first opportunity to thank my committee. It is not, or it was not easy to process all this within the timelines, Honorable Speaker, but my committee have, of course, very able committee members. And as you can see, after the explanation from Honorable Kemosi, I want to thank my committee, Honorable Speaker, for really giving all for the country and having this, Honorable Speaker. We only urge the House to agree with us. Honorable Speaker, maybe I was not understood, and I want you to understand me, Honorable Speaker. Maybe I was not understood when I was explaining something on the CBA. And I will endeavor myself, because I know you're able, Honorable Speaker, I will endeavor myself to bring that CBA to you. Let me tell you, I had a very good opportunity to interact with that CBA for 6 months, when we are trying to find where the problem is in terms of this problem that bedevils KQ. And even in the cancellation that you had, Honorable Kemosi making contribution, Honorable Speaker, they have a very difficult CBA, very complicated CBA, Honorable Speaker. Without fear of contradiction, we are leaders, and we are like doctors. So when we see something bad, we will say it is bad. Whether people like or they don't like, they will find tomorrow. It is very complicated. And let me give you this example, Honorable Speaker. The CBA which is existing, and I'm not either side, whether pilot or management. And we're not about salaries. Let me give you this example, Honorable Speaker, that the CBA which I saw only recognizes 3 types of fleets. It recognizes 787, 737, and Embraer. So what about if we buy another expanding and get, let's say, an Airbus? We will have a problem, Honorable Speaker. Let me tell you, we'll have a big problem in this country. And therefore, we better face the truth. We have a big animal that will even choke even expansion. Even this that we are approving today, Honorable Speaker, if the House agrees with us and we approve, we will have, with the current CBA, we will have a problem in scheduling those connections that we are talking about, Honorable Speaker. Let me tell you the truth. I will be very honest with the House, and I will remain honest and truthful to the law and the principles that I think they need. But the goodness, Honorable Speaker, is that this CBA is under negotiation. That's why I'm saying they should not take forever, both sides, the management and the pilots, they should not take forever negotiating and blocking expansion. I will give you this, Honorable Speaker. Within this week, I'll bring that to you so that you can, because I know you're able and you have helped me and my committee in a number of other issues that we have dealt with, Honorable Speaker. There is a problem in the current CBA in terms of expansion and in terms of even having, whether you look at expansion from adding more fleets or adding networks. There is a problem, Honorable Speaker. At least I've said, so when the problem will be there and when you will see it, at least I will have absorbed myself, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, then I want to thank honorable members who have made their contribution. And therefore, Speaker, I beg to reply.
Very well, the Honorable Kosing. I don't envy you your role in this Kenya Airport Authority and Kenya KQ issues. They are complicated, as you say. Very well, I think we've done very well. I will direct that the next necessary steps in this particular motion be undertaken when the matter will be set down on the order paper again. I'll therefore direct that we move to the next order.
Order number 13, motion, report on the public finance management, Biashara Kenya Fund Regulations 2019, and 3 other related sets of regulations.
I can't seem to see the chair of Committee on Delegated Legislation in the House. I therefore direct that this business be deferred and that we move to the next business. Honorable members. The time being 6:15 p.m., this House stands adjourned till Wednesday, 11th September 2019 at 9:30 a.m.